Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Naruto Did Not Take the Chuunin Exam. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 10 S-Rank Rumble. Team Kakashi stood in the infirmary waiting for Hinata to finish making the antidote. As they did, Naruto stretched and said, "Once Hinata-chan is done making the antidote, we should get going and see if we can find the trail." Kakashi shook his head. "It will be hard. Kankuro went after them alone. That means we have lost them. Unless we have something we can use to track them." Kankuro slowly sat up as he said, "I have something you can use." There were two of them. One of them captured Gaara, while the other was the one who defeated me with ease. I managed to get a piece of cloth off him, and it's in Crow's hand. Kakashi gave Kankuro an eye smile. "Making a success out of a failure, you are an exceptional shinobi, Kankuro." It was at that point that Temari rushed forward. "Kankuro, are you okay?" He nodded slowly. "Yes sis, I'll be fine." He turned to look at Naruto. "It's been too long, Naruto. Did they send you willingly, or did you force the Hokage to allow you to come help Gaara?" "Hey Kankuro, good to see you're awake. Pervy Sage sent our team out since we are the best suited to rescue Gaara Databayo." It was at that moment Chio spoke up. "Kankuro, are you certain that the one you fought was Sasori?" Kankuro looked at them in shock. "Honored elders, what are you two doing here?" Ebizo answered. "Chio was called in to heal you. Is it true that Sasori was the one who defeated you?" Kankuro looked down. "Yes, it was Sasori of the Red Sands. He said so himself. He knew about Crow, Black Ant, and Salamander. He knew how to take them apart with ease." It was at that moment Hinata came in with a small cup. "Kankuro-san, you need to drink all of this." After Kankuro drank all the antidote, Hinata said with a gentle smile, "You should be fine. Now please don't move until the paralysis ends." Kankuro looked at his trembling hands as Gaara's words echoed through his mind. "I will work hard, because I want to become acknowledged by others." That's what I thought when I looked at Naruto Uzumaki. Bonds with others. Up until now, I only knew them as hate and murderous intent. But I wonder, what is that bond he longed for? Now I understand, even only a little. Pain, sadness, and joy. These feelings allow you to understand others. This is where it all starts for me. Starting with this small bond. I too want to become someone who is needed, instead of a weapon that is feared. But as the Kazekage of Sunigakure. He looked at Naruto as he said, "Naruto, please save my brother." Naruto grinned as he said, "Leave it to us, Kankuro. Gaara is my friend, and we won't leave him to die." Itachi spoke up from his spot leaning against the wall. "We won't let the Akatsuki complete their mission." 10 minutes later, entrance to Suna, Kakashi had the piece of cloth in a small bag. He was about to summon Pakin when a voice sounded behind them. "I'm coming with you." They all turned to Temari standing there. A voice sounded out above them. "No, Temari, stay here and protect the village." They looked up to see Chio. "From the shinobi of the sand, I will be enough." "But honored elder." Chio jumped off and landed on the ground in front of them. "Don't treat me like a crippled old woman. I've wanted to give my cute grandson some love for a while." A location in the land of rivers, Sasori and Deidara slowly walked into the cave. As they did, the entrance closed behind them and sealed. When they arrived, they were greeted by a shadow with unique eyes that were purple with black rings. "You're late. Prepare it immediately." Deidara had his clay bird set down Gaara. "The Jinchuroku was much stronger than I expected and was ready for me." Itachi definitely gave information on all our fighting styles. The shadow's eyes narrowed as he said, "Itachi will feel the wrath of God eventually." The shadow then ran through several hand signs and slammed his palm on the ground. With a massive puff of smoke, a large statue with 2 hands and 9 closed eyes appeared. The shadow made another hand sign and said, "Assemble." Shadows began to appear on each finger of the statue as the shadow jumped onto his own. Moments later they were joined by Deidara and Sasori. The original shadow spoke once more. Now let us begin. From this point on it will take 3 days and 3 nights to complete. Everyone be mindful of your real bodies. Zetsu, use your real body to keep a lookout. The shadow shaped like a Venus flytrap person nodded. I will do so. The shadow with a bandaged sword on his back said. 3 days, huh? I guess it's good we got replacements for Orochimaru and Itachi then, huh? The one with the side said. Hey, let's get this fucking thing started already. With Team Kabuto were tree jumping towards the Land of Wind border. They could tell they were getting close. It was at that moment that a small pug landed in a tree in front of them. Kabuto, wait! Kabuto stopped. He had done a mission with Kakashi 2 months ago and got to meet the shinobi's ninja dogs. Pakken, what are you doing here? Does Kakashi know that we're coming to reinforce his team? Kakashi ordered all 8 of us ninja dogs to split up and find the scent of the Akatsuki members. We discovered that they were heading towards the land of rivers between Konoha and Suna. I smelled your team and came to get you. I can guide you towards the Akatsuki lair so you can reinforce the others. Kabuto nodded. Lead the way, Pakken. None of them noticed a Venus flytrap-like man sticking out of one of the trees behind them, watching as they jumped away. Akatsuki lair. Gaara was suspended in an energy bubble in midair. Streams of brown chakra flowed from his mouth and eyes as he screamed in pain. Suddenly Zetsu spoke up. An enemy from Konoha is approaching. It is a team led by Orochimaru's former assistant Kabuto. I do not recognize the other 3. A new shadow with a sword strapped across their back spoke up. I have some subordinates that will be able to slow them down. Don't waste using that jutsu to stop them. The Sound 4 will take care of it, Pain. The pained shadow nodded. Then have them take care of it. With Kabuto's team, suddenly Pakken stopped as he said. Wait, there are people coming. 4 of them, 3 men and a woman. Kabuto took a moment to take a breath and sensed the area around them. His eyes shot back open as he turned back. So the Sound 4 have decided to grace us with their presence. The Sound 4 stood on the rock outcropping behind them. The 4 hadn't changed much in the past few months. Tayuya grinned as she said. Well, if it isn't the silver-haired fucking traitor Kabuto. Some pale-ass emo-looking fucker. That blue-haired Kungirin, and some weirdo wearing a cloak. Why don't you take off the fucking hood so we can see you, fucker? Kimimaro pushed back his hood, making all 4 of them flinch. Kidamaru grit his teeth as he said. So even Kimimaro betrayed Lord Orochimaru. Kimimaro shook his head. I was never loyal to Orochimaru. I was loyal to my friend Kabuto, not Orochimaru. Sakan turned to the others as he said. Each one of you takes one of the others. I'll face our former leader. Don't hold back at all. With those words the Sound 4 jumped into battle against the Konoha ninja, while Team Kabuto prepared themselves to face down the enemy shinobi. An hour later, with Team Kakashi were jumping through the trees. None of them noticed the same man who spied on Team Kabuto appear in a tree before frowning and disappearing. Akatsuki lair, Zetsu's shadow spoke up again. There's another group of Konoha shinobi heading this way. The team contains Kakashi Hatake, Hinata Hyuga, Itachi Uchiha, and the 9 Tails Jinchuriki. The pained shadow spoke up again. So a group with 2 S-class shinobi and 2 A-class shinobi, one of which is one of our targets. Who will take them? The swordsman shadow spoke up. We'll take care of them, Pain. We have some unfinished business with them. Pain nodded. Then get to it. Team Kakashi, they landed on the ground to begin to run the next stretch. It was at that moment that Kakashi noticed something. Everyone halt. In front of them were a pair of Akatsuki members, their faces covered in the shadows cast by their hats. The taller one was obviously a man, strapped to his back was a chikudo, in position to be easily drawn. While the smaller figure was a woman, and over her right shoulder was a massive hammer with a blood-red head. The hammer's head was as big as her torso. Kakashi frowned as he looked at the two. Itachi's information didn't cover a man with a chikuto and a woman with a hammer. Who are you two? The woman gave a creepy giggle as she said, Oh Kakashi-sensei, don't tell us you've forgotten already. She pulled off her hat revealing short pink hair and bright green eyes. She had an insane grin stretching her face as she said, Well, it's nice to see the other two members of Team 7 here. Oh look, you brought Naruto's Hyuga whore and the murderer with you as well. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he said, Don't call Hinata a whore again, Sakura. You of all people don't get to insult anyone, seeing as you killed your own parents for no good reason. It was at this moment Sasuke spoke up, taking off his hat as he did. So Konoha let the murderous traitor back into their village. They just erase his crimes as if he was the one who lost everything. Naruto scoffed as he said, Kettle meat pot, guess what, you're both black. You're the traitor, Sasuke. Shingetsu appeared in his sheath in Naruto's hands. And if you get in our way, then you will be returned to Konoha in a body bag. Itachi and Kakashi stepped forward. Itachi looked at Naruto as he said, No, Naruto, you and Hinata take care of Sakura. We will deal with my little brother. As he said the words little brother, you could hear just the smallest amount of sadness and regret in his voice. Lady Chio, please stay back. We will need your aid when we reach the Akatsuki lair. Naruto nodded as the two turned to face Sakura, who grinned and slammed her hammer in the ground, causing a crater. So I get to put Naruto Baka and his big-chested Hyuga floozy in their places. It was at that moment she seemed to randomly devolve into a rant about how impractical large breasts were. Hinata resisted the user to cover her chest. She was no longer self-conscious about her figure for a couple reasons. First, she no longer had to worry about people hitting on her and scaring her desired boyfriend away. Second, Naruto happened to like her body, she knew this for a fact. But she still sweat-dropped hearing the rant. I think Sakura has a bit of a complex about her breast size. Naruto shook her head. That's the least of her problems. She's a complete and total yandere as well as being completely insane. It was at that moment Naruto realized something. Holy shit. What, Naruto-kun? I wonder if you would have gone full-blown yandere and kidnapped me if I never noticed your feelings. I mean, you did use to stalk me. Hinata was about to deny it when she froze. She honestly couldn't fully deny it. Especially with being forced out of the Hyuga clan. The only reason she didn't lose her mind after that was because of Naruto and Kurenai, with Naruto being the biggest reason. Hinata blushed slightly as she said, I don't think I would have reached that level. It was at that point that Sakura's rant stopped. Oh well, shall we play? I need to bring back Naruto Baka alive. But the big-breasted bimbo isn't needed alive. With those words she pulled her hammer out of the crater and rushed at them with it. Hinode appeared in Hinata's hand as she blocked the strike of the hammer, the impact causing a crater to form around her. Hinata had mastered Tsunade's super strength, making her extremely dangerous in a fight. By mixing Juho strikes and super strength strikes she had created an extremely deadly taijutsu style. But it truly showed its power when she was using Hinode. The sentient staff was almost impossible to damage, and could repair itself if it was damaged. This, paired with her new super strength, made her a monster to fight with her staff. Her skills with the staff were on par with the deceased third Hokage, even if their weapons were slightly different. As Hinode blocked the hammer strike, Naruto jumped over the two and hooked his leg around the back of Sakura's neck and slammed her into the ground. Reception! Upon impact she burst into a cloud of smoke, revealing a log. Naruto ducked down to dodge a swing from the hammer and kicked backwards at his opponent. Sakura jumped over the strike and swung her hammer down, using its weight to flip around and impact on the ground. But Naruto had already moved out of the way. As he did, he tapped her leg lightly, an unseen seal appearing on her leg. Hinata rushed forward and stuck at Sakura's stomach with her staff, seeking to knock her back. Sakura spun around the strike, using the handle of her massive hammer to spin and kick at Hinata's back, which she ducked under. Sakura's kick continued on, only to be met by a kick from Naruto as he spun on his palm. The two kicks connected and Naruto's kick barely won, knocking her off balance. He then used his palm to launch himself up. As he did this, he put his hand on his sword's handle. Comet! He drew his blade and swung down on his enemy, using his fall to increase the power behind the strike, a trail of sparkling chakra following behind it. Sakura jumped off the handle of her hammer, gripping it at the last moment so it was pulled out of the crater to follow her when she landed on the ground with a grin on her face. "This is fun, you've gotten good Naruto baka, but nowhere near Sasuke-kun's level." She then looked at Hinata. "Not to mention the former class wallflower has gotten so strong as well." Naruto held his sword in front of him. "Sakura, surrender now." How about no?" With those words she tossed the hammer into the air and pulled out several senbons that she threw at the two that they were forced to block and dodge. As they did, she quickly raced through hand signs as she said, "Demonic illusion, shadow hidden in the light." With those words she disappeared from their view, much to their shock. The hammer stopped in midair and disappeared as well. The two stood back to make sure she couldn't strike them. Hinata's Byakugan couldn't see her, and Naruto was only getting a very weak voice from her presence. He sensed an attack coming from his right and blocked it with his sword. But the strike was powerful, and he was sent skidding back. But the moment the force let up, he slashed at the area it had come from and managed to clip Sakura. This drained the genjutsu, canceling it out. Sakura frowned as she realized what happened. She didn't know that sword could drain chakra, as she wouldn't be able to use genjutsu to help her fight them. The Byakugan could see through genjutsu placed on the user, not to mention swords that drain chakra make it almost impossible to hit the user with a genjutsu. While the one she had just used was different as it placed an illusion on her surroundings, not directly affecting them, it still wouldn't help if he could drain it dry. Her whole fighting style revolved around her genjutsu and strength. She was also a skilled medic nin, but still. Her job was to support Sasuke in his battles, thus why she focused on those things. She charged at them and began to spin, her hammer flying around in circles as he did, whipping up a dust storm as she did. The two jumped back out of the way. As she stopped spinning, she brought her hammer to bear and slammed it into the ground, shaking the area around her. The two jonin were forced to channel chakra to their feet to keep from being knocked down by the shaking ground. Naruto and Hinata shared a look as the quaking stopped and rushed forward to strike at Sakura, who had withdrawn her hammer. Hinode lanced forward, trying to strike Sakura's chest, but the pinkhead ducked under it and swung her hammer in a wide arc, forcing the two to jump back. Instead of standing up, Sakura crouched lower before lunging forward at Naruto and swung. The hammer hit him straight on the chest with a loud cracking sound. Her insane grin grew as it hit, and Hinata's scream sounded, only for his body to vanish, leaving behind his trench coat. Suddenly she felt a burning pain in her neck and her view went completely off kilter, spinning like she had been thrown into a washing machine. With a thump she landed on the ground, to see her own deprecated body with Naruto standing over it. The technique he had used was a non-elemental defensive ninjutsu of the Uzumaki clan known as Utsasimi, cast-off cicada shell. For the technique to even be used he required to be hit in the torso, while wearing a loose piece of clothing. It was one of the reasons he always wore his trench coat, no matter what the weather was like. Naruto flicked Shingetsu, making the blood fly off onto the ground before sheathing him. Naruto looked at the body of the girl who used to be his teammate, only to get a shock upon seeing what was happening. What the hell? Naruto and Hinata vs. Sakura. Winner: Naruto and Hinata, Kakashi and Itachi vs. Sasuke. As Kakashi and Itachi walked towards where Sasuke was standing patiently, Kakashi slowly pushed up his Hitai to reveal his Sharingan. Meanwhile Itachi blinked, and when he opened his eyes they had entered the Sharingan state. Sasuke looked back at the two with his Sharingan. He drew his Chikudo and held it in front of himself. Itachi, today is the day you die. Itachi drew his Tanto as he said, No, little brother. Today is the day I make up for a mistake I made a long time ago. Kakashi nodded as he settled into his stance. We will take you down, Sasuke. You have abandoned the village, thus you must be brought back. Sadly, you being alive is optional. As much as it hurt him to see his former student who had abandoned the village, he had to put his emotions under lock and key for the moment. Sasuke was a traitor who was involved in the death of 2 people in the village. The 3 stood there for a few seconds before they exploded into action. Sasuke summoned shuriken from the seals on his wrists before launching them at the two. Kakashi blocked them with his kunai, with Itachi doing the same with his tanto. After unleashing his barrage, he charges at the two before slashing at them. Itachi parries the blade with his tanto. He was able to see the lightning chakra rushing through the blade. As he parried the blade, Kakashi went for a low kick trying to sweep Sasuke's legs, which made the young traitor flip back to dodge it. Itachi pressed the advantage, slashing at his younger brother, forcing him to keep blocking his tanto. As he did this, Kakashi began to attack Sasuke with taijutsu from the side, seeking to press and force him to slip up. They were testing the waters at the moment. It was at that moment that Sasuke raced through several hand signs. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. He spat out several small fireballs at the two. The two jumped out of the way. As they did, they raced through their own hand signs. Itachi finished first. Fire style, Fireball Jutsu. He released a large ball of fire from his mouth that Sasuke was forced to jump out of the way to dodge. Kakashi finished his jutsu and slashed his hand that was glowing with lightning through the air. Lightning style, Lightning Beast Tracking Farm. From his hand was launched a hound made of lightning. The tail of the hound was a cord connected to Kakashi's hand. The hound hit Sasuke, only for him to burst into smoke, revealing a log. Kakashi frowned as he noticed something. He's weaker than he should be. If he was able to kill Orochimaru, he should be better than this. Itachi had noticed the same thing. Sasuke was not nearly as strong as he should be. He was at best a fourth the strength he should be at currently if what Kabuto reported was accurate. Itachi spoke up. You're not Sasuke, who are you? Sasuke looked at him for a moment before saying, I see, I told Pain that these fake bodies would limit us too much. It makes sense you would realize what was going on, even if the technique had not been revealed till a couple weeks ago. Kakashi narrowed his eyes. So you really aren't Sasuke? I suspected as much. You're some kind of reinforced clone. Sasuke just stared at the two. You could say that. But that doesn't mean I will surrender. I will kill you both. Suddenly Sasuke coughed up blood as a piercing pain speared through his back. What? He managed to turn to see Itachi behind him with his tanto stabbed into her back. When he looked forward, the Itachi there burst into a murder of crows. A genjutsu. But when? Itachi looked at the clone of his brother stoically as he said, I was able to do it because you aren't the true Sasuke. You're just a copy that pales in comparison. Next time we face each other, hopefully it will be the real you. That way I can correct the mistake I made years ago. Itachi pulled his tanto out of the clone's back and let it fall to the ground dead. He felt sick killing something that looked like his little brother. But he had already resolved himself. His brother had become lost in the same darkness their clan had been lost in. He had no choice but to cut him down. Because he doubted any of them could save Sasuke. Battle between Kakashi and Itachi versus Sasuke. Winners Kakashi and Itachi. It was at that moment that the body began to change. What laid in the crater was the body of a man with black hair and a beard. Chio, who had come closer, said, Why did that missing nin change into Yura? Itachi looked at Chio. Who is Yura? He's a jonin from my village. It was at that point Naruto came over. Kakashi-sensei, Itachi, Granny Chio, Sakura changed into some woman with brown hair. Kakashi frowned as he said, Sasuke changed as well. He became a jonin from Suna. They must have somehow caught those two and used the kinjutsu. They were trying to delay us. Naruto frowned. We need to get moving again. Hinata, who had come up to the rest of the group a few seconds ago, said, Naruto-kun is right. We need to get moving. Kakashi nodded. We must be getting close if they're trying to delay us. The group quickly started off again, hoping that they were in time to stop Gaara from having his biju extracted. Akatsuki Lair, the one named Pain, spoke up. The jutsu has been released much earlier than I expected. Sasuke spoke up. I had to limit our strength quite a bit to help with the sealing. Sakura was able to use more strength, but she got taken by surprise. Sasori snarled as he said, You should have lasted longer. For that jutsu 2 of my subordinates were used as sacrifices. Sasuke scoffed. They should have felt privileged to serve such a purpose. Pain looked at the two. Enough, Setsu, go take care of the sacrifices for the impersonation jutsu. Sasuke spoke up. If the sound 4 have fallen as well, feel free to dispose of them as well. Setsu nodded. Yes, leader, thank you, Sasuke. An hour earlier, with Team Kabuto, the battle had begun between Team Kabuto and the Sound 4. It had broken into 4 separate fights. Guren was facing down Kidamaru, Sa was facing Tayuya, Kabuto was taking on Jirobo, while Kimimaro was facing Sakan and Yukon. Battle, Guren vs. Kidamaru. Guren dodged an arrow launched by Kidamaru. As she flew through the air, she made a few hand signs. Crystal style, crystal needles! She launched the pink needles that formed in her hands at Kidamaru, who ducked and dodged them. The battle had turned into a long-range dance. Kidamaru had much stronger attack power with his arrows, but Guren's crystal weapons could pierce through his armor with ease. Not to mention, if she managed to get close enough, it would be checkmate for Kidamaru, as she would trap him in crystal. But not least of her advantages was the fact that she could perform all her hand signs one-handed, while Kidamaru didn't need any hand signs to create his arrows. The archer had long since entered the second level of his curse seal. His skin was now a deep red with long gray hair. His eyes had become black with yellow iris, while he had grown 2 horns, making him look almost demonic. Upon landing, Guren began to prepare another ninjutsu before she reared back her hand. Crystal style, giant hexagonal shuriken! She hurled the large pink shuriken at her enemy. It flew through the air and just barely missed taking off his top arm, but left a cut on him. Kidamaru grit his teeth before returning fire with an arrow that Guren blocked with a crystal. On second thought, this might not be very even now that he thinks of it. He had forgotten how strong Guren was. While not at the level of Kimimaro, she was still a monster in combat. Guren ran through the hand signs and opened his hands, extending them in front of her. Crystal style, jade crystal mirror! From her spread palms appeared a large mirror. Jade crystal clone technique! From the mirror appeared 6 clones, before the mirror collapsed into dust. They all looked at Kidamaru, who promptly cursed. Why couldn't he get the pale guy who was fighting Tayuya? The clones rushed at him, and he began to fire at them, but he knew he wouldn't be able to hold this position for much longer. He got 3 of them before he jumped off the rock pillar he was on, heading for the next one. Sadly for the hunter, that was the last move he would ever make, as the clones were a distraction, one that he had fallen for. As he landed on the ground under ignited in light. He just had time to turn his head slightly to see the real Guren standing behind him holding a ram's sign before he was encased in a pink crystal. Guren nodded at that. He was ready for transport, and could become a valuable source of information. He wouldn't even realize he had been trapped, as he was in a state of suspended animation. Guren vs. Kidamaru. Winner Guren, flawless victory. Sai vs. Tayuya. Sai jumped back to dodge the strike of one of the Oni. As he did, he unfurled his scroll and quickly drew out several lions. Art of cartoon beast mimicry. The lions peeled themselves off the scroll and launched themselves at Tayuya, who used one of her ogre to block them, cutting off her sight to Sai for a moment. Sai quickly made a hawk and jumped on it, taking to the sky. He began to draw several more lions before launching them down at her. She blocked them once again with the ogre and grit her teeth. This pale fucker was the worst possible matchup for me. The guy is a quick long-distance fighter, making it hard for my ogres to hit him. Not to mention the fucker put in earplugs to neutralize my genjutsu. Honestly, it's the first time anyone had the presence of mind to do that. Little did Tayuya know, Sai had used the second he had been out of her eyesight, to pour some ink on the ground. This ink had formed into a snake that was stealthily moving towards Tayuya. Sai just had to distract her while the snake did its job. After a couple more minutes of blocking attacks, Tayuya finally cursed and shouted, "Fuck this!" She played a quick tune on her flute as she transformed, her skin becoming dark, and horns growing from her head. As she transformed, the ogres grouped together, with the largest one tossing the other 2 into the air to try and hit Sai. The ink bird dodged around the ogres. As it did, Sai noticed that his snake had gotten close. He had used a lot more ink than normal on that snake, so it should hold her. It was at that moment that it struck, quickly capturing and trapping Tayuya, making her drop her flute as it did. The unique nature of the ink Sai used made it difficult for a substitution to be used once they were restrained. So Tayuya was stuck trying to escape with brute force. The bird quickly flew down low enough for him to jump off behind her, landing lightly. She didn't notice as she was too busy trying to escape from the snake. 2 seconds later she felt a piercing pain in her arms and was barely able to turn her head before she felt herself being pulled back. She managed to catch a glimpse of a tiger biting her before her scream was cut off and she disappeared. In Sai's hand was a scroll with a picture of Tayuya being held down by a tiger. He smiled as he said, "Sealing technique, tiger vision staring bullet sealing complete." With those words he rolled up the scroll and stored it away. The woman was now ready to be taken back to Konoha and interrogated. Sai vs. Tayuya. Winner Sai. Kabuto vs. Jirobo. Kabuto was currently dodging boulders being thrown at him by his opponent. He was currently facing the slow-moving tank of the Sound 4. He was probably his best matchup with how slow he was. Kabuto might be mostly a medic nin, but he was easily as skilled as Kakashi was in taijutsu. He was also a skilled Jinjutsu practitioner. Jirobo was slow and hit hard, relying fully on his earth ninjutsu to try and trap his opponents. Not to mention he tended to play around too much. The largest of the Sound 4 was in his Cursed Seal's 2nd level. He had orange skin with bumps all over it. Jirobo's left arm was currently hanging limp as it healed from Kabuto cutting the muscles on it. Kabuto bent backwards to dodge a boulder that nearly hit him before standing back up and lunging at Jirobo, his hands glowing with chakra scalpels. With a line of light, Kabuto spun and cut into Jirobo's right leg, but frowned when he realized he hadn't cut quite deep enough to knock him down. The walking tank could still stand, but he doubted he would be able to walk very quickly. Jirobo roared out, "Hold still, traitor! I'm going to drain you completely dry!" Kabuto ignored the roaring and cartwheeled out of the way to dodge another flying boulder. Upon landing he raced through several hand signs before taking in a deep breath. "Ninja art, poison mist!" From his mouth spewed a glowing green cloud of poison. Jirobo was unable to move out of the way in time and was engulfed in the cloud. A few seconds later he managed to escape the cloud but was coughing harshly as he did. Kabuto rushed at the coughing shinobi and slashed his scalpels twice. The first across his right arm, making it useless, while the second hit his left leg, making him fall to the ground, unable to stand. Kabuto made sure to kick him so that he fell backwards. Jirobo lay on the ground, unable to do anything. Kabuto looked down at him. "It's the end of the line, Jirobo. I hope you have made peace with yourself, because you are about to meet the Shinigami." Jirobo glared at Kabuto but didn't respond. With a single slash, Kabuto slashed Jirobo's jugular. Within seconds, the large shinobi bled out and light left his eyes. Kabuto released the flow of chakra to his hands and the chakra scalpels died. He turned and began to walk away. As he did, he pushed his glasses up. Kabuto vs. Jirobo. Winner Kabuto. Kimimaro vs. Sakan and Yukon. Sakan and Yukon had entered Curse Seal level 2 and separated. They were both in front of Kimimaro, but enough apart that they could attack from 2 sides. Kimimaro. With a twitch of his shoulder, the skin erupted and he pulled out a blade with a flourish. The 2 charged at him as he slipped into a stance. Dance of the Camellia! He rushed at Sakan and began to stab at him quickly, leaving after images with each stab. Sakan was forced to back up, dodge, and weave to avoid being impaled by the bone blade. He was going to slip up sooner rather than later. It was at that moment Yukon came in to attack. Kimimaro stopped striking Sakan, who charged at him to take advantage of what he saw as an opening. Dance of the Larch! Multiple bones erupted from all over Kimimaro's body, catching both of them off guard and hurting their hands. Kimimaro slowly stood up as he retracted the bones. "You will not be able to forcibly fuse with me." Kabuto-sama already came up with a counter for that technique. He has come up with counters for all your techniques. The two glared at him before charging again. He leaned forward and hardened bones erupted from all over his body. Dance of the Willow. With those words he charged forward like a wild cyclone. He would block each one of their strikes before returning it with a stab or slash. Soon the twins were panting and covered in wounds, while Kimimaro looked no worse for the wear. Before they could recover, Kimimaro pulled back in his bones before he said quietly, "Dance of the Aspen." From his arm appeared 4 bones that jutted forward, forming into 4 spears that came together at one point. He rushed forward quickly, and before Yukon could react, his new spear plunged through his chest, destroying his heart. Sakan's eyes went wide as he screamed, "Yukon!" He charged at Kimimaro in a rage as the albino pulled his spear from Yukon's corpse. He turned as he did. He reached up and pulled his blade out of his shoulder again and stabbed forward, sliding the blade into the surprised Sakan. "Sleep, and meet your twin in the afterlife." He left the blade in Sakan as he walked away. Sakan slowly fell to his knees before collapsing to the ground dead. Kimimaro vs. Sakan and Yukon. Winner Kimimaro. Team Kabuto met up in the center. Buren quickly summoned her trapped foe for Sai to seal away for transport. Once that was done, Kabuto spoke up. "Let's get moving, we have to get to the location as quickly as possible. We are on a time limit." They quickly ran from the area, hoping to get to a location with trees again so they could increase their speed. An unknown location, the place was a massive desert, above it was a white sky. In the center of it was a large cave with a gate in the entrance. The gate had seen better days, as once were bright glowing silver bars, were now covered in rust and disintegrating. In front of the gate was Gaara, who was staring at the occupant. It was a massive brown tanuki with black markings all over his body. But the tanuki was looking extremely malnourished. Most of his tail was missing and his eyes were dull. Gaara looked at the ground as he said, "You know, Shikaku, for the longest time, I hated you. A part of me hated you for what you made me do. Then when the seal was fixed and you began to act sane, I thought I would still hate you. But you managed to prove me wrong." He looked up into the eyes of Shikaku, who looked to be in extreme pain, but was still listening. "Thank you so much for being by my side, Shikaku. You are one of the closest friends I have." Shikaku spoke up as well. "I will miss you, kid. After Bunpuku passed on, I thought I would never meet another good human. You managed to prove me wrong. I hope we meet again, kid. If there is anyone I would willingly be sealed inside, it's you, Gaara." Soon the mindscape was completely swallowed in a bright white light. The last thing that was heard was Gaara's voice. "Naruto Uzumaki, I just wish I could have seen you once again, my brother." Akatsuki lair. The next day, the chakra flowing from Gaara's mouth slowly died. As it did, one of the eyes on the statue gained a pupil. Slowly the orb of light that was engulfing Gaara was pulled back and the Kazekage landed on the ground, not moving at all. Pain seemed to smile as he said, "It is done." A few seconds later, his turn went back to normal. Sasori, Deidara, deal with the ones outside. Capture the Jinchuruki alive. I'll be waiting for contact. With those words, the statue disappeared along with the shadows. Outside the Akatsuki lair, a couple minutes ago, Team Kakashi landed on the water in front of the boulder. Naruto, seeing the tag on the boulder, frowned and walked over to examine it. He was so busy studying it that he didn't notice Team Kabuto arrive. After a few minutes he cursed. "Damn it, it's a 5 seal barrier, a well-made one that I can't bypass. We have to remove the other 4 seals and this one at the same time to be able to get through." Kabuto, who was behind Naruto, said, "Well then we just have to deal with the seals." Naruto, who had been so distracted and hadn't noticed Kabuto, screamed like a little girl and jumped, clinging to the cliff face. "Kabuto, don't do that." Everyone chuckled as Kabuto pushed up his glasses. "Whatever you say, Naruto-kun. Now why don't tell us the locations of the seals and my team will take care of them." Naruto jumped down and pulled out his goggles, his ink and brush, and 4 tags. He quickly put on his goggles and activated the focusing mode that would allow him to see better. The tracking/copying seal he was making was difficult, but would require little chakra. He began to slowly draw the seal onto the boulder surrounding the 5 seals barrier tag. After a few minutes, an ornate seal was on the boulder with 4 circles, which each got its own tag placed into it. Soon the seal was complete. He made a ram hand sign to build up chakra before clapping his hand together. When he did this, the seal on the boulder began to glow before after a few seconds it disappeared. In exchange, the tags began to glow as new seals appeared on them. After a few more seconds they stopped glowing and Naruto quickly grabbed them. These will lead you to the barrier tag. Each tag leads to a different barrier tag. They each took a tag as Kakashi said. We will use the radios to keep in contact and time the removal of the seals. Once the tags are removed, Hinata will smash the boulder apart. With that decided, Team Kabuto split off into 4 different directions. Kabuto going northeast. Kimimaro going northwest. Guren going southeast. While Sai took off to the southwest. Kabuto landed in the field. In front of him was a large rock with a tag on it. It was the seal tag he had been heading for. I'm in position. Kimimaro stood on a rock wall. In front of him was the sealing tag he had been looking for. He spoke into the radio. The tag is in front of me. Guren stood on a riverbank. In front of her was an old tree. On the trunk of said tree was the sealing tag she was hunting down. I have found my tag. Sai, in a grove, stood Sai in front of a large tree. High up on the trunk of the tree was the tag he was searching for. I have reached the objective. Team Kakashi, Naruto was on the boulder, his hand resting on the tag. In front of the boulder was Hinata, who had Hinode out, ready to destroy the boulder. Naruto spoke into the radio. On the count of 3 we pull the tags. 1, 2, 3. With those words he pulled the tag and flipped off the boulder, just as Hinata thrust her staff forward. Upon impact it destroyed the boulder almost completely, leaving almost nothing but dust behind. Kabuto smiled as he pushed up his glasses. From the sound of destruction that I could hear all the way over here, I would say it worked. It was at that moment that Kabuto noticed something rising from the grass in front of him. He tapped the radio as he said, Kimimaro. Before he could complete his question, Kimimaro answered. Kimimaro looked at the clone in front of him. Kabuto-sama, if you're going to ask about the clone, I have one in front of me as well. Guren frowned at the clone of herself. What the hell is this? Sai. It could be a trap that Naruto didn't notice in the seal. Possibly one tied to the outlying tags so not to be noticed from the main seal. As he spoke, the clone of himself seemed to be shaking off a daze. Kimimaro frowned. Using a trap that forces a 4-man team to separate. Then having a hidden trap ready to keep them from returning to aid their allies. Even if you managed to defeat the clone, you would be tired from the fight. It's a genius tactic. He slipped into a stance, ready to face down his clone. Team Kakashi rushed into the cave. Inside they saw the sight of Deidara and Sasori. Deidara was sitting on Gaara's body like it was some macabre chair. Sasori just stared at the two as Deidara said, So which one of you is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki? Naruto kept his temper under control, something that Jiraiya had made sure to teach him how to do. He slowly reached into his pouch as he stared at the two and decided to use the tried and true Uzumaki ultimate technique. Pissing off the enemy till they lose their cool. So you two are the bastards who kidnapped Gaara? Itachi, I thought the only woman in Akatsuki had blue hair? Because that woman right there is obviously blonde. Itachi managed to keep his face straight, but if you looked close, you could see his mouth twitch slightly. Deidara developed a tick on his forehead. I'm a guy, you blind asshole. Naruto tilted his head. Really, you even sound like a girl, Databao. Sasori had to wrap his tail around Deidara to keep him from charging in. Stop, you fool, it's obvious that he's the Jinchuriki. He's trying to make you lose your cool. Naruto grinned as he said, Well, it's nice to know that the coward hiding in his little shell has a brain. Sasori ignored the obvious barb. Keep to the plan, Deidara. Deidara jumped up as his bird grabbed and swallowed Gaara. Yes, Sasori-san. I get what you're saying. He hopped on his bird, which took off into the sky. Kakashi turned to Naruto and Hinata. Hinata, Naruto, stay here with Lady Chio. Itachi and I will chase after Deidara. With those words, Itachi and Kakashi raced out after the blonde, gender-confused Akatsuki member. Itachi, Hinata, and Lady Chio versus Sasori. Naruto drew out Shingetsu while Hinata slipped into her stance. Chio, on the other hand, looked at the puppet in front of her as she said, "How far you have fallen, my grandson." The tail behind the crouched figure waved as he said, "It has been a long time, grandmother." Chio pulled 10 kunai out of her robes and connected them to her fingers with chakra thread, leaving them to float in front of her before launching them at him. Sasori blocked most of them except for 2 that managed to tear his robes, forcing the puppet master to tear off his robes, revealing what was underneath. It was not human at all. In fact, the being looked like an unholy mixture between a human, scorpion, and a statue. On Sasori's back was a face with a mouth that had a scorpion tail out that was swinging around like a demented tongue. One of its arms was clad in what looked like a gauntlet. The puppet spoke up. "If you plan to oppose me, grandmother, then you and the 2 with you will join my collection." Hinata frowned as she said, "I have heard of puppet armor, but I have never seen it before." Chio responded to what she said. "It's called the Hiriko. It is Sasori's favorite puppet. It serves as both a weapon and armor for him, protecting his greatest weakness. If we want to kill Sasori, we need to destroy the armor. That will be your job, Hinata. Your super strength will easily smash through his armor. Once he's out of the puppet, then all 3 of us can work together to take him down." Hinata nodded as Naruto spoke up. "What should I do, Granny Chio?" "I need you to wait for him to be out in the open. Once he is, the true fight will begin." Naruto nodded as he watched Sasori. Chio looked back at Hinata. "You need to smash open his armor, but you must avoid every trap he has. They are coated in deadly poison. To avoid his attacks, you need knowledge of traps and extremely good reflexes." Hinata smiled. "I might not be as skilled in trap making as Naruto-kun, but I know a little bit. I'm also extremely quick and good at dodging." Chio nodded as she removed her hat and took her hair out of its bun. "I will support you, the first move has already been made." Sasori grumbled. "So have you finally decided to make your move?" Chio answered him. "Relax, we will kill you quickly." Hinata charged forward. As she did, Sasori ripped the cloth off his mouth as it unhinged. Upon doing that, he released a barrage of poisoned Saban needles at her. Hinata began to dodge through the Saban storm with ease. As the Senbons fully passed her by, he lifted his strange arm and launched it at her. When it got close, Hinata dodged her way through each sharpened piece of shrapnel. As they fell, she raced forward again. Sasori tried to back up as he launched his tail at her, only for it to stop inches from her face. "What? The old hag must have attached strings to it when I blocked the kunai." Hinata thrust her staff forward, hitting the puppet in the face and breaking it before destroying the shell. As the puppet broke, a black cloaked figure leapt out of it and landed a short distance away. "Of course, that's my grandmother. You were able to chakra threads on my tail from a distance without me noticing. They were attached to the kunai, weren't they? Moment I blocked them, the threads switched to my tail." Chio nodded. "Indeed, I suppressed my chakra as much as possible to make them invisible, but you managed to work it out. I am impressed, Sasori." The cloaked figure nodded as he said, "Well, you are the one who taught me how to play with puppets." Chio answered him. "That may be true, but playtime is over, Sasori." Sasori tore off his cloak, revealing his true self. He was young-looking, in his mid-20s, with red hair and a dreamy expression. "Do you really think it will be that easy, grandmother?" Chio and Hinata both looked at him in shock as Chio said, "How, you haven't aged at all." Naruto frowned as he said, "Your presence is weird, it's almost like you're alive but at the same time not alive." Sasori pulled out a scroll. "I guess I should bring out my favorite. It was almost impossible to kill him, but it was worth it." With a puff of smoke, the puppet appeared behind him. Chio's eyes widened as she said, "It can't be." Hinata focused on Chio. "Lady Chio, what's wrong?" "That's the third Kazekage. Sasori smirked as he moved the new puppet to the front. Let us begin. Chio sighed. You have truly fallen, Sasori. You've gone after the Kazekage 3 times now. Naruto looked at her in confusion. What do you mean 3 times? He has killed the 3rd Kazekage. He aided in the capture and death of Gaara, and he helped Orochimaru kill Raza. Puppet weapons were found at the site of his death. Sasori smiled as he said, Well, shall we get started? With those words his puppet flew through the air at the 3. As it did, multiple blades erupted from its arm, dripping with poison. Chio jumped to the side while Naruto flipped in the other direction. Hinata, on the other hand, jumped over the puppet, and as she was in the air she struck at the blades with her staff, shattering them in the process. Sasori didn't react other than to slightly twitch his finger, making pipes appear from the back of the Kazekage puppet. These puppets began to fire kunai at Hinata, who blocked them with Hinode before landing on the ground and disappearing in a flicker of lightning, reappearing next to Chio and Naruto. Sasori gave another twitch as the Kazekage's other arm split open, revealing 4 parts with seals engraved on them. Sasori made a tiger seal, and the seals began to smoke before hundreds of arms came rushing out. Chio jumped back once again while Hinata began to spin, releasing chakra to block the arms and knock them upwards into the air. As she did that, Naruto raced through several hand signs before releasing a fireball at the arms, causing them to erupt into flames. Hinata jumped out of the way as the burning arms came back down. Sasori frowned and flicked his fingers. This caused several pipes to appear on the arms before they began to fire kunai at them. It was at that moment Chio stepped forwards and summoned something out that blocked the kunai. It was 2 puppets wearing black cloaks. One was a man with short red hair, while the other was a woman with long dark hair. Sasori looked at the 2 puppets with recognition in his eyes. So you brought them? Chio nodded. Yes, the first 2 puppets you ever built. The mother and father. You do realize that they won't help you at all. I built those 2 puppets, I know exactly how they work. With a flick of his hand, a pipe appears on the arms that releases a white powder. The powder landed on the arms, putting the flames out. Where the flames had been burning, the wood of the arms was blackened and flaking. In response, Chio's 2 puppets put their hands together before pulling them back, revealing razor-sharp ninja wire between their fingers before they raced forward in almost a blur. Each time they touched the arms, they would be cut apart. When they got close to the Kazekage puppet, they disengaged the wires and summoned weapons to their hands, while the Kazekage did the same. After a fierce clash, they separated, revealing that all 3 puppets' weapons were broken. Sasori sighed as he said, This has gone on long enough. I'm going to get serious now. With a flick of his fingers, the puppet's mouth opened and out of it flew black sand. Naruto was confused as he asked, Is that sand? Chio frowned as she said, It is the 3rd Kazekage's most lethal weapon, the iron sand. The Kazekage was born with the magnetic release Kekei Genkai. With the help of his Kekei Genkai he developed this. It is a jutsu based off of Shikaku's ability to control sand. It can serve as both a lethal weapon and as a powerful defense. Naruto turned to Chio in shock. But how can he do that? It's just a puppet, it doesn't have any chakra. Hinata frowned as she examined the puppet. You're right, Naruto-kun. But it does have a chakra network, and Sasori's chakra is flowing through it, allowing him to use the jutsu. Chio nodded. Hinata is right. The reason it has a chakra network is because it is a human puppet created from a once-living body. By making the puppet that way, he has kept the chakra coils the same as when they were alive, allowing him to use magnetic release through the Kazekage's puppet. It is a technique that only Sasori knows how to use. Most likely every grain of that iron sand is coated in poison. Suddenly the iron sand separated into small spikes surrounding the puppet as Sasori spoke. Iron sand drizzle! With those words the small spikes of sand raced through the air at them. Hinata spun, releasing a rotation to block the iron sand from getting too close. Naruto on the other hand dodged and flipped his way through the shower, being able to sense the intent coming his way. All the sand impacted on the area where Chio was, engulfing it in dust. Naruto and Hinata both screamed at the same time. Lady Chio / Granny Chio. The dust cleared to reveal the father puppet in front of Chio, its arms extended with a glowing shield in front of it. Sasori smiled slightly as he said, "So you've upgraded them, huh? You even added a chakra shield, although it won't help you much now." The father puppet began to slowly shake. Iron sand was coating its limbs, keeping it from moving. "You know that the iron sand is fatal to all puppets, but you have become slow in your old age, grandmother. Now you only have one puppet left." The Kazekage released a large amount of iron sand, easily 5 times the previous amount. It began to compress into a pyramid, a sphere, and a rectangular prism. "Iron sand gathering assault!" With those words he launched the 3 shapes at his opponents. Naruto dodged the sphere as it got close to him. He slashed into it with Shingetsu, who greedily drank the chakra. This caused the sand to begin to lose its cohesion, and in a couple seconds it had all fallen to the ground. Chio was forced to use Mother Puppet's chakra shield to protect from the prism, but it was still pushing her back. Not to mention the puppet's shield was dying. At that moment something struck the prism, knocking it away. Hinata jumped away from the impact of the pyramid. As she did, she channeled chakra into her muscles before swinging her staff, knocking away the pyramid, which collided with the prism, knocking it away from Chio. The 2 shapes hit the wall and caused the cave to shake, bringing the ceiling down on them all. The shinobi all dodged out of the falling rocks. After a few minutes they could see the sky and the ceiling was pretty much gone. Sasori grunted as he had the 2 shapes raise into the air before colliding again and changing. "Iron Sand World Method!" The changed shapes turned into a ball of spikes which erupted downward, forcing them all to dodge. Hinata was forced to use rotation once again to protect herself. Chio had managed to jump back, but Naruto was in the middle of it, dodging as much as possible until the cloud of dust hid him from sight. When the dust cleared, they were both shocked to see Naruto still standing, but he had multiple cuts on his body. Chio's eyes went wide as Naruto wobbled and fell to his knees, his katana being the only thing keeping him up. "Oh no." Sasori smirked as he said, "You were right, grandmother. All the iron sand is soaked in an extremely potent poison. He won't be able to move at all." With those words he launched the Kazekage puppet at the downed blonde. Naruto suddenly moved and a glowing Shingetsu slid into the Kazekage puppet. "Nebula!" With those words the puppet began to glow before it exploded. As the pieces fell to the ground, the iron sand fell around Naruto. The blonde smirked at Sasori. Sasori frowned. "How? That poison should have paralyzed you." Naruto grinned as he wiped the blood from his cheek. "If I was the Jinchuruki to any bijou other than the Kyuubi, then it might have. You see, one of the abilities that the Kyuubi gives his hosts is super accelerated healing. I can't regrow limbs. But according to him, I can easily burn out any poison that enters my body. He also says that I could easily heal from a hole to the chest as long as my heart isn't destroyed. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt like a son of a bitch though." Sasori frowned as he grabbed his cloak and tore it off, revealing his body. "It's been a long time since I've used myself." His body was thin. From his back sprouted 2 bladed wings-like things from his lower back. On his upper back was a holder for 4 scrolls. From the empty cavity of his stomach was a stinger which was impaled in the ground, and he was standing on it. On his right chest was what looked like a compartment, while on the left was some weird black container with the word Scorpion on it. Chio looked at him in shock. "That's why you have not aged at all. You have turned yourself into a human puppet." Suddenly Sasori rushed forward, his hands outstretched, releasing a wave of flames at them. The 3 moved out of the way, dodging the flames as Sasori's stinger was launched at Naruto, who blocked it with Shingetsu, knocking the stinger away from him. One of Sasori's wings clashed with Hinata's staff before pushing. Suddenly Sasori felt a jerk. He turned to see that Naruto had grabbed the cord and was reeling him in. As he had already pulled out the cord to the end and was pulling him close, Shingetsu had been stabbed into the ground, and in his free hand was a Rasengan which he shoved into Sasori's chest. Rasengan! The force of the blow blew Sasori's body to pieces, launching them away from him. The blonde shinobi frowned as he said, "He's not dead yet." As if to prove Naruto right, Sasori's body was pulled back together by chakra strings. Once he was reassembled, he stood up and looked at them. That wasn't very nice. Chio pulled out a scroll. This is a jutsu I thought I would never have to use again. But it seems that won't be so. I'll be putting an end to this now. She unfurled the scroll, revealing 10 different storage seals. White Secret Technique, the Chikamatsu collection of 10 puppets. With those words, the storage seals released 10 different puppets, all wearing white cloaks. The first puppet resembled an oni with purple skin and golden horns. It had extremely large hands that looked like they could smash boulders with ease. The second puppet was bone white with gray markings around its mouth. It had large hands that had more joints than the others. The third puppet had a red face with white hair. The fourth puppet had extremely pale purple skin and long black hair. The fifth puppet had blue skin with a bald head that had holes in the top. The sixth puppet had white skin. Around its mouth the skin was green. On its head it had spiky gray hair. The seventh puppet had white skin and red markings under its eyes. It had a gray ponytail and beard. The eighth puppet had peach-colored skin with long white hair and large sideburns. The ninth puppet was female in appearance, and had red hair tied into 2 buns. The final puppet had pale purple skin with 1 eye. It had a gray mane of hair around its head. Sasori looked at the puppets as he said, "Impressive, grandmother. I have always wanted to see this technique. The technique you used to destroy an entire castle." A scroll popped out of his holder which he opened. As he did, the compartment on his chest opened as well. With a large puff of smoke from the scroll and whooshing sound as a large amount of chakra threads rushed from his chest. Soon they were surrounded by 100 puppets, all wearing red cloaks. Red Secret Technique, performance of 100 puppets. With this technique I destroyed an entire country. The 3 stared in shock at the puppet army. Naruto grit his teeth as he sheathed Shingetsu and pulled out 8 throwing knives. It was time to use the Hiration. He didn't use it much, because he wanted to keep it as a trump card. But with the current army facing them, he would need it. He threw them forward, and they landed on the ground around the battlefield. He had made sure to make it look like he was tossing them at the puppets, which Sasori would move out of the way. As they did, he drew out Shingetsu once more. Naruto's use of the Hiration was different from his father's. Minato Namake's version would use it completely for offense and defense. It's how he destroyed an entire army during the Third Shinobi War. He would flash behind an enemy and gut them or slash their throats, or even use a Rasengan on them. The teleportation would aid in this by increasing the force of his strikes, making them hit harder. Naruto had actually fused the technique with the Utsusimi to instead create a high-speed movement technique. Instead of his new technique being used to help with offensive attacks, he instead used it to move around the field to dodge attacks and to attack from different angles. He also had a much wider range of teleportation than his father had. Naruto's technique allowed him to teleport within 20 meters of a throwing knife instead of 10 like his father. They even leave marks behind in the ground if they are destroyed. Because of the way he had changed it, Naruto wouldn't disappear in a flash of light. Instead, he would seem to flicker and reappear in a similar flicker at his destination. But the downside of the technique was he wouldn't be able to teleport across the continent to any of his markers. He had to be within 300 meters of one of his markers to move to it. He called the new technique Flash Step. He had actually gotten the name from a manga he read as a kid. Hey, if I'm using Bleach references, I might as well mention them. Not to mention I did mention that manga existed in this world. For those wondering about Utsusimi, does work similar to the one from Bleach, but this version was made by the Uzumaki clan and has nothing to do with the Bleach version. As Naruto set up the battlefield, Chio slipped into a stance that would give her ease of movement, while repositioning all her puppets. Meanwhile, Hinata spun Hinode before moving close to Chio. She would be in charge of protecting Chio. Sasori smirked as he launched his army forward with just a grin. As he did, Chio began to move his fingers and began her counterattack when the black-haired clone and the red-faced one linked hands. The red-faced one's head detached and formed into a chakra shuriken before being thrown by the black-haired one into the oncoming horde. The chakra shuriken cut through at least 10 puppets before coming back to its body. The blue-skinned bald puppet slammed its head into one of the red-cloaked puppets, and from the holes sprouted long tendrils that claimed another 10 puppets. Meanwhile, the female puppet was slicing through any puppets that got close to it. 3 puppets assembled together. The white-haired one, the one with the gray mouth, and the one with red markings around its eyes. The white-haired one stood on top of the other 2, and they all opened their mouths, revealing a kanji inside them. Chio spoke up as she pulled the last movements needed for the technique to start. 3 jewels suction crushing. Dozens of the puppets were pulled into the space between the 3 and crushed to small balls. But more were coming from above and crushed the 3 white-cloaked puppets. Meanwhile, Naruto was slashing and kicking apart any puppets that got close to him. When it seemed like he was running out of puppets, he would take a step and vanish, reappearing in another location to begin clearing house. He made sure not to appear too close to any of his throwing knives, making it seem like he had mastered the body flicker to the level of sure sway of the body flicker. Hinata spun Hinode, striking down 2 puppets with ease before she backflipped, kicking another puppet with a foot glowing with chakra, destroying it. Chio barely managed to dodge an attack from one of the puppets before her defensive puppet smashed it. Chio looked around before she frowned. "Naruto, can you get close to Sasori?" Naruto, who had flash stepped to a spot close by, nodded as he said, "Yeah, I can get pretty close to him. But I don't know how to kill him yet." A puppet appeared behind him and dropped a small ball into his hand. "Use that on Sasori, it should allow us to stop this." Naruto gripped the ball and disappeared. Sasori's eyes went wide as he turned to see Naruto appear past his puppet army and tossed the ball at him, which changed into a large lion mouth full of sharp blades. The lion head was flying at him too quickly for him to dodge it. It impacted on him and sent him into a wall, sealing his body and damaging it badly. All the other puppets fell to the ground. But Naruto frowned as he noticed the black tube was missing. It was at that moment Naruto sensed a presence with his haki and disappeared again, reappearing in front of Chio, just in time to take a blade to the gut. But in return his blade stabbed its way into the black tube. Naruto coughed up blood before he said, "You shouldn't have tried to attack so soon after changing bodies, Sasori. It just made it obvious where your vital point was." He pulled Shingetsu out of Sasori's body, allowing him to fall to the ground silently. Moment Sasori's body fell, Naruto pulled the blade out of his stomach. As he did, it began to burn and heal slowly. "That seriously hurt." Hinata moved up to him and began to use the medical palm jutsu on his stomach to help the wound heal. "What did you expect, Naruto-kun? You took a sword to the stomach." Naruto pouted. "Not like I wanted to be stabbed. It's just he moved faster than I expected." Naruto, Hinata, and Chio vs. Sasori. Winner: Naruto, Hinata, and Chio. Itachi and Kakashi vs. Deidara. Minutes after battle against Sasori began, Itachi and Kakashi were hopping along rock walls trying to catch up with Deidara. Kakashi had his Sharingan uncovered. "I should have had Naruto summon us a dragon. Itachi, can you possibly summon a crow to carry us?" Itachi shook his head. "Most of the Crow clan are support-type summons. The only one large enough to carry us would take almost all my chakra to summon. If we could get a clear shot, I could destroy that clay bird's wings." "Couldn't you use a genjutsu on him? He is constantly looking back at us." "I would, but he has learned not to look me directly in the eye. That scope is his way of countering my genjutsu. He's only looking at us with the scope, keeping his other eye closed. I would need to use Manjikyu to be able to hit him. But Tsunade-sama said I should refrain from using unless absolutely necessary for 3 months. I might have the eternal Mangekyo now, but it still needs to adjust." Kakashi frowned as he said, "I have an idea, but it will require 5 minutes to use." Itachi frowned before he said, "You're going to use your own Mangekyo, aren't you?" Kakashi had used it once where Itachi could see it during their time in Umbu. He knew what Kakashi's Mangekyo could do. It would be perfect for this situation. 5 minutes later, Deidara frowned as he looked down at them with one eye closed. "They have been awfully quiet. That can't be a good sign at all. What are they planning?" Kakashi frowned as he opened his Sharingan eye. Okay, it's ready. I will have one shot at this. His eye had transformed from the original Sharingan. Its design had changed from 3 tomo to 3 triangles wrapping themselves around the pupil, similar to a pinwheel. If I miss, then I will trust you to handle the rest while he's distracted, Itachi. Itachi nodded as Kakashi focused on Deidara's torso. As he did, the space around him seemed to bend and warp. Kamui! At the last second, Deidara managed to move, so only his arm was torn away. He cried out in pain, but he didn't get a chance to do much more as Itachi was close by with his tanto drawn, swinging it at him, forcing him to jump off the bird. Before he could try to pull the bird to him, Itachi cut through a wing with the tanto, forcing it to fall towards the ground. As it got close, it was caught by a shadow clone of his and safely lowered to the ground. The clone opened the head to reveal Gaara, who didn't seem to be breathing. Itachi sighed sadly as he looked at the Kazekage before turning to Kakashi and shaking his head. The shadow clone stayed near the bird as the real Itachi and Kakashi surrounded Deidara. This is getting a little dangerous. It was at that moment that Naruto, Hinata, and Chio arrived. They began to circle Deidara as well, leaving one possible location he could move to, the bird. So Sasori is dead. That's not good at all. I need to get to the bird so I can fake my death and escape. Luckily, I still have one trump card. It was at that moment that something jumped onto the Itachi clone's back and exploded, dispelling it. It made Itachi flinch and Deidara took off quickly. Naruto pulled out a throwing knife about to stop him when he got close to the bird. No one move. If any of you make a single move, I will blow myself up along with the Kazekage's corpse. Everyone put down their weapons, unwilling to risk Gaara's body being destroyed. Chio especially was reluctant as she could bring him back. But it was at that moment that something completely unexpected happened. There was a loud slicing sound and Deidara coughed up blood. He looked down to see a tan wooden shaft going through his stomach. Along the shaft, a soft green. He turned to see the shaft coming out of the top of the bird's head, and holding the end was Gaara, who was heavily panting with his eyes barely open. He spoke with a weak voice that was hard to hear. That was for trying to blow up my village. With a flick of his finger, he tapped the top of the handle, shuddered as a red X appeared on his body. The missing nin fell to the ground in pieces. Always check your prisoner for weapons. With those words, Gaara fell face first and almost fell to the ground, if Naruto hadn't caught him. Gaara, how are you still alive? Gaara gave his closest friend a weak smile and spoke in a dry voice. I'm not dying that easily, Naruto. I have to serve as your best man at your wedding after all. But Shikaku was taken out of you. Jinchuruki can't survive something like that. Gaara chuckled weakly as he said. Not all of him. A day ago, in Gaara's mindscape, Gaara was leaning against the gate to the seal in his mind. As he did, he stared out into the desert. Shikaku, I don't want to die. Shikaku flinched hearing the tone of voice that Gaara spoke in. The young man was absolutely terrified. It was at that moment Shikaku decided he had to do something. He knew this would only really work this late in the game because of the amount of chakra he had. He turned to his shortening tail, and with his claws engulfed in wind, he sheared off a small part of it, which fell to the ground of the cave. You won't die, Gaara. The Geto Mazo is targeting my body. This small amount of chakra I left behind won't be pulled into it, and it will be enough to heal the damage that me being extracted from you would cause. It should also put you into a near-death state that will allow you to pretend you have died. Gaara turned and looked at Shikaku in shock. Why would you do that for me, Shikaku? Kid, you are basically the perfect example of what Bunpuki used to talk about. You are what helped me at least regain a little faith in humanity. You and that Uzumaki kid that holds my older brother. I don't want to see you die, kid. Gaara looked at Shikaku as he said quietly. Thank you, Shikaku. You're welcome, kid. Just promise me when you get out of this, you'll keep protecting that village of yours. I will, Shikaku. Present time, Gaara looked down as he said. I'll miss Shikaku. He was a good friend. Naruto had laid Gaara against a tree. Hinata was currently treating his wounds with medical ninjutsu. Chio smiled at seeing the young man who she had caused to suffer for so long had survived. It was at that moment that the bush shook and Team Kabuto walked out. Kabuto's clothes were torn in multiple places and all of them except Kimimaro were out of breath. Naruto turned to Kabuto and said, "Hey guys, what happened?" In another location, Zetsu looked at the body on the ground. "So this is Sasori's true form." A hyper voice spoke up. "Look, Zetsu-san, I found it! Now I can become a member of the Akatsuki. I mean, there's now an opening." With those words, the orange-masked man tossed the ring into the air. "Do you really think it's that easy?" A second voice spoke from Zetsu. "Oh, don't be so down. Toby could be a good member. He's a good boy." Toby missed catching the ring. But before it could fall, a hand shot out and grabbed it. "Oh, be careful, Toby. Wouldn't want to lose the ring." The two turned to see the grinning face of a man who came along with the woman that had joined the Akatsuki shortly after Itachi had left. Toby's voice sounded. "Thanks for that, Kyoki-san." Kyoki's grin widened. "You're wrong though, there are now 2 openings. Deidara is dead as well." Toby pouted. Oh, maybe you'll be my partner if we both join." Kyoki let out a mad cackle. "That sounds like fun." Make graduation. Naruto stood in a training ground. In front of him were his 4 apprentices. Naruto looked at the 4 as he began to speak. "Okay, troops, you have spent the last 2 years learning the fine art of stealth and trap making. You have gone a long way, to the point you're able to get jonin with your traps in midday. It is now time for your graduation." The 4 genin all grinned. They had enjoyed the last 2 years of training. They had all developed their own calling cards. Naruto, of course, used an orange Uzumaki spiral. He didn't care if he had to clean up after the prank. Konohamaru was a monkey sticking out its tongue. Udan used a percentage sign, he really loved math. Moegi used a sparrow in flight, while Hanabi used a firecracker. No one except Hayashi and the group knew that Hanabi was part of the pranks. The worst they ever got punished was with a couple D-ranks, and that was if they were caught in the act. A little known and old law in the Konoha lawbook basically made it so they couldn't be punished too harshly for pranks. The reason for this was it was meant to keep the villagers and shinobi on their toes, and expose possible security risks. The law had been put in place by Hashirama. Oh, sure, the Umbu and Chuunin could chase them if they caused chaos and force them to clean it up. Naruto pulled out 5 scrolls. "These scrolls contain our targets for tonight. Each of us will be hitting the 2 locations on each scroll." They all accepted their scrolls. But they were surprised when they opened it, and Konohamaru spoke up. "Boss, are you sure about this second target?" Naruto grinned. "Yes, I think we should all hit this second target together." Hanabi spoke up. "If you say so, Naruto. Which one did you all get?" "I got the second," Udan answered. "I got the first." Moegi smiled as she said. "I got the 5th. Konohamaru's grin was filled with mischief. "I got the 3rd. "So we're really going to do it?" Naruto nodded. "Yep, we're going to redecorate the Hokage monument. The first time for all of you. But the second time for me. I'll see you all tonight." The next morning, the village Konoha woke up to an odd sight. It seemed that Naruto and his 4 apprentices, no one was sure who the 4th one was. Various clans had once again been hit. The Akimichi woke up to see a firecracker painted over their meat storage. They entered to find that all the meat had been replaced with vegetables. The Akimichi went on a rampage, planning to hunt down one responsible. Sadly, they didn't notice till a couple hours later that the vegetable storage had the same firecracker painted there. It was also where all the meat was. The Yamanaka clan flower shop had a percentage symbol over the door. It was soon found out that the prank they suffered was that each door and window in the building had been hit by a clothes-changing seal, provided by Naruto, along with the costumes. The costumes those hit by the seal were forced into were impossible to remove. Ino spent a day in a bright orange tracksuit, like what Naruto used to wear. She refused to leave the house for 3 days. That's how long it took for the seal to stop affecting her clothes. The Aburame clan was hit by the sparrow prankster. That prank involved a rather unique chemical released as an aerosol into the compound. The chemical didn't affect humans, but it made insects act similar to someone who was stoned, except without the munchies. The Aburaim clan didn't leave the compound that day. Apparently, as quiet as the Aburaim clan was, they oddly had the best weed in the village. So they spent that time getting stoned and joining their insect partners in enjoying life. The various jonin of the village had been hit by the monkey prankster. Kakashi had all his smut replaced with gay porn involving Might Guy. Might Guy had all his spandex suits replaced with tuxedos, which he couldn't take off. Asuma's shampoo had been replaced with green hair dye. This led to him having a green head of hair and beard. While Anko's prank wasn't really that bad. In fact, she would later proclaim how amazing said prankster was, as her prank had her boyfriend Irika tied up in her bedroom for her to have fun with. Irika would enjoy this prank as well later on. Neither would be seen for 3 days. The spiral hit every store and restaurant, except Ichiraku's. They had all been painted bright colors and some had seals that replaced the bells to play random sounds every time the door was opened. Sometimes a mooing cow. Sometimes a fart would sound. Sometimes a creepy voice welcoming them to the store. Heck, some played random songs. But the most shocking thing was that the Hokage monument had been painted on, once again. The first Hokage had a joint sticking out of his mouth. It was obvious that it wasn't a cigarette thanks to the face he was painted to look like he was stoned. The second Hokage was painted to look like Guy, complete with a cardboard cutout of a thumbs up. The third had an Ika Ika book, and was painted to look like he was leering at it with blood coming from his nose. The fourth Hokage had a large lump on her head. Behind him was a shadowy figure with glowing eyes, and 9 waving red tails holding a rolling pin. Anyone who knew Kushina instantly recognized who the shadow was. The fifth Hokage's face had been made to look like it was swollen and covered in bruises. Across his forehead was the words, "Perverted old man." The chase for Naruto Uzumaki didn't last long. As with the help of his apprentices, he had set up many traps the night before. Many of his chasers ended up in very humiliating situations. Sadly for them, Iruka wouldn't be able to aid them this time, as he was busy with Anko. When he was seen, he had the widest grin on his face. After 4 hours, they just gave up. Luckily, the Hokage monument prank had seals set up to take care of it. A week after it was redecorated, it went back to normal. Ninjutsu corner, demonic illusion, shadow hidden in the light, B-rank genjutsu. The user uses their chakra to weave an illusion over themselves, hiding their chakra signature in the light to make it impossible to sense them and anything they are touching. The trade-off is the user is unable to use any jutsu while it is in use. It is one of the rare genjutsu that is undetectable by the Byakugan and Sharingan. This technique was used by Sakura Haruno. Utsasimi, cast-off cicada shell, B-rank defensive ninjutsu. Utsasimi is an Uzumaki clan defensive ninjutsu. The user must be wearing a loose piece of clothing on their torso. Upon impact of the torso, the user releases a large amount of chakra and replaces themselves with air, leaving behind a loose piece of clothing to house said air. Naruto usually does this technique using his trench coat. This technique is used by Naruto Uzumaki Dance of the Aspen, A-rank Kekkai Genkai Ninjutsu. The user grows 4 bone spears from their arm that comes together to form a single tip to increase piercing power. This technique was developed and used by Kimimaro Kagaya. It is inspired by the fact that many aspen trees grow together, even sharing the same root structure. These aspen trees that grow together are known as clones. Flash Step, S-rank Fuinjutsu/Ninjutsu hybrid. The Flash Step was developed through the use of the Hiraishin and the Utsasimi. In essence, it is a more stealth and movement-based offshoot of the Hiraishin. To use the technique, the user tosses several throwing knives amongst the battlefield, creating a grid that can be used to move around on. Any point within 10 meters of one of the marking knives can be used as a landing location. It is hard to tell this technique apart from a high-level body flicker technique, as the user simply flickers out of existence. The seals act as spatial anchors, allowing the user to dive into the dimension underneath their own and step out in one of the anchor zones. This technique was named after the movement technique from Bleach by the same name. The only current user is Naruto Uzumaki. Chapter 11: The Zombie Duo. Yujito Ni was a jonin of Kumo. She was also one of the two Jinchuruki, holding Matatabi, the two-tailed Bakeniko. She was one of the few Jinchuruki who had a good relationship with her Bijou to the point of having the seal unlocked. She was easily one of Kumo's best jonin, with an S ranking when using her Bijou's chakra. Although she did not completely rely on it like some. One of the things the Kumo shinobi were known for was not basing their entire fighting style on a bloodline or special gift. It's what made Kumo shinobi so dangerous. When not using Matatabi's chakra, she was a high A rank. Currently through, Yujito was running for her life, one arm hanging limp. She was being chased by two S-rank missing nin that worked for the Akatsuki. Haiden the Zealot, and Kakuzu the Heart Stealer. She had managed to avoid most of Haiden's attacks. Thanks to the warning Konoha had sent out, she knew that a single scratch from Haiden was fatal. The reason her arm was useless was because Kakuzu managed to hit her and had broken the bone. The two had ambushed her as she was completing a mission that had been assigned to her. She was usually with a team, but since this mission was a C rank inside the borders of the Land of Lightning, the council had decided she could take care of it alone. Why she had been assigned a C rank mission, she didn't know. But she suspected that the council was behind her being ambushed. As she got into the sewers, she turned to the enemy behind her. She panted as she said, "You really think I will go down without a fight? Then you are fools. You're now trapped in here with me. Kai!" She made a single-handed hand seal and the entrance exploded behind them. The tunnel behind her exploded and collapsed as well. Yujito slowly got onto all fours, her right arm barely holding any weight as blue chakra that looked like flames began to engulf her. Soon Yujito had vanished. In her place was the Nibi. "You dared to target my friend Yujito and I shall burn you both to ashes." With those words the Nibi roared at the two of them and charged. Several hours later, at border of the Land of Lightning, Team Kakashi and Tsunade landed on the road. They had tree-jumped their way towards the Land of Lightning. Team Kakashi was escorting Tsunade to Kumo to deliver the final draft of the new treaty. 14 years ago, Kumo and Konoha had become allies. A few years back, shortly after the Chuunin Exams, the two villages had opened negotiations on a new trade treaty. Tsunade was the ambassador. Despite her temper, she was a surprisingly good diplomat. Team Kakashi had been assigned to escort her, because Naruto was going to be spending time in the Kumo Jinchuruki training ground. He was going to undergo the final step needed to become a perfect Jinchuruki, which meant he would get to spend time with Killer Bee. Hinata would be going along with him, thanks to the engagement ring now sitting on her ring finger. He had proposed to her last week. While Kakashi and Itachi were there to make sure either Naruto or Tsunade were attacked by Akatsuki. Hinata had been on cloud 9 for the past week. She constantly had a small smile on her face. Ino and Tenten had spent a lot of time talking to her about his proposal, and helping her plan the eventual wedding. Suddenly a loud explosion sounded. The group looked at each other before quickly heading towards the explosion. When they arrived at where the explosion had come from, they found a blonde woman who was barely standing, facing off against two members of the Akatsuki. As they landed, the blonde woman fell to the ground. One of the Akatsuki members, the one with no upper robe, laughed. While the other, the one with an upper body robe, but was missing a sleeve, moved over to grab her. The two shinobi heard them landing and turned. Kakuzu frowned as he said, "Haiden, take care of them. I'll get Yujito back to base. Make sure to bring the Jinchuruki back alive." Haiden grinned as he said, "Happily. I'll sacrifice these bastards to Jashin." With those words he charged at them, swinging his scythe down, only for it to be blocked by Hinode. While the spear was parried by Shingetsu, Itachi took up position, drawing his tanto, while Kakashi fell back to Tsunade. "Lady Tsunade, I need you to head towards Kumo quickly. We need someone to inform them that Yujito Ni has been captured by Akatsuki so they can send reinforcements." Tsunade grit her teeth. She didn't like it, but she knew Kakashi was right. After a few seconds she nodded and quickly began to run towards where Kumo was. As she did, Kakashi drew out a couple kunai and moved towards the battle. Hinata, with a bit of enforced strength, pushed away Haiden's scythe before spinning her staff and lancing it forward, striking his chest easily. This caused him to be launched back. But after a few seconds he got back up. "I will sacrifice you fuckers to Jashin," Itachi spoke up. He was giving his team information. While he knew each of them had a dossier on each known member, he was refreshing their memory. Haiden the Zealot is one of the weaker members of the organization. But he is also the most troublesome. A single cut is all he needs to kill you. But he is extremely unskilled in battle. But he makes up for that with the fact he is basically immortal. Naruto frowned as he said, "Then how do we deal with him exactly?" Itachi frowned. "We need to seal him away." "Naruto, do you have anything that could work?" Naruto shook his head. "I'm not quite at the level of being able to create one of those seals in a battle situation. I could make one, but it would take an hour to be completed." Naruto parried away the wildly swinging scythe as he spoke. "I doubt this guy would stay in one place long enough for me to form the seal." Itachi frowned as he thought about the problem. His eyes had enough time to adapt to his body that if he was given a couple minutes he could use the Manjikyu. If he did, then he could use the blade of seal him away. "Give me 5 minutes. If you all can buy me that time and get him to stay in one place, then I can take care of him." Itachi jumped back and the 3 other shinobi took up positions. Naruto and Hinata were in the front, while Kakashi was behind them. He would be providing support for the other 2. They were better suited for fighting Haiden. It was Hinata who parried the scythe this time, knocking it away. As she did, Naruto blocked the spear, before pushing it aside and slashing Shingetsu at Haiden, who barely managed to avoid losing his arm. Instead, he just had a wide gash across it. But Haiden wasn't expecting Naruto to make use of the overpowered slash to spin and roundhouse kick him in the chest, sending him flying sideways. Kakashi noticed what Naruto was doing a second before he had done it, raced through the hand seals before slamming his palms on the ground. In Haiden's path raised a sharp spear of earth that he impaled himself on. 10 seconds after that, Haiden began to curse louder than before as he pulled himself off the spike. Of course, he didn't get far as Hinata's staff swung hard, hitting him in the head. Even an immortal like him was able to have his brain jumbled. Haiden froze for a few seconds as he tried to let his mind recover. Before, with a scream, he pulled himself fully off the spike and charged at the 2 again. Naruto blocked the blade of the scythe, sending it past him before he kicked upwards, hitting the zealot hard in the chin, forcing his mouth shut and cracking a few of his teeth. As he did that, Hinata slammed her palm into his chest and sent him flying back. The 2 jumped back as Kakashi moved forward, racing through hand seals before he thrust his glowing hand forward. "Lightning style, lightning beast tracking farm!" From his outstretched hand came a hound made of lightning, its tail still connected to Kakashi's hand. The hound tackled Haiden, electrocuting him as he was trying to get up. The shock caused him to fall back down, spasming as he cursed loudly. While he may be immortal, it doesn't mean his body doesn't react the same way as a normal body. Naruto, who had been going through hand seals, slammed his foot on the ground. "Earth style, swamp of the underworld!" The ground in front of them began to change and soon turned into a deep swamp. The spasming Haiden began to sink into it. When he was halfway in, he stopped spasming, before disappearing. In his place was a rock. Haiden's voice sounded from the side. "You motherfuckers dared to try and stop me from sacrificing you all to Jashin. Now die!" Hinata spun, her staff knocking his scythe away from her, before bending backwards to dodge the stab of the spear. Naruto's blade slid past Hinata's chest by a couple inches, before slashing diagonally, cutting the spear in half thanks to the wind chakra. He then spun and kicked the spear tip back at Haiden. The zealot swore as the spear embedded itself in his chest. He glared at them as he pulled the spear out of his chest and tossed it aside. "For that, I'm going to make sure you suffer even more when I get my hands on you bastards." It was at that moment Haiden noticed that Itachi wasn't attacking. Instead, he was standing in one place, and looked like he was focusing. Oh, you fuckers are buying time for Itachi. Let me guess, he's the finisher? Hee hee, that makes this much easier. All I need to do is get Itachi, and it will be game over for you fuckers. If I get him, then I will just have to outlast you all. Naruto looked at Hayden like he was an idiot. Do you honestly think you could kill Itachi? I mean, he's no longer sick like he was when he was in your organization. Hayden was about to answer, then he stopped and seemed to think. Okay, I'll give you that bastard. I doubt I could actually hit Itachi. The fucker is too slippery. I'll just focus on you motherfuckers. Now die for Jashin. Hayden was not anything near patient enough to try and fight Itachi. The only times he had fought the elder Uchiha, he had gotten his ass kicked without being able to land a blow. Naruto blocked the scythe, but this time he couldn't force it away. It was as if the force behind it had increased fivefold the moment the insane priest began to swing his weapon with both hands. What the hell? He started to slide back, Shingetsu the only thing keeping him from getting gutted. It was at that moment Hinata's staff hit the shaft of the scythe and knocked it upwards, freeing Shingetsu. Naruto immediately took advantage of that to slash at Hayden's arm. He wasn't looking to remove it, just disable it. He wasn't sure if the seal would grab any severed limbs. Thus they couldn't risk cutting off any parts of him. If they could, it would be so much easier. Naruto's cut didn't get quite deep enough. Even as they watched, the wound seemed to heal. Hayden growled before he did something neither of them had seen before. He flung the scythe at them. Hinode was used to parrying the flying scythe and knocking upwards. As it did, Naruto attempted to cut the metal cord with a wind chakra enhanced slash, only for it to not harm the cord at all. Hayden smirked as he pulled the scythe back to him. Hayden grinned. You fuckers really thought I could only charge. Hayden coughed up blood as a hand clad in lightning burst from his chest, destroying his heart. With a jerk, the hand was pulled back. Hayden took a moment to compose himself before looking back, just as the clone of Kakashi that did it dispelled. He turned to look at the real Kakashi. What was the point of that move, asshole? Kakashi shrugged. Mostly to annoy you. I was also hoping that if I took out a lung you would stop talking. Hayden actually managed to look offended at that. Just for that, you die first. Kakashi gave him a nice smile. It's not like it's important. I mean, the hole is healing as we look at you. Hayden looked at Naruto and Hinata. I'll make you two a deal. Give me the one-eyed fucker, and I will just sacrifice him and leave. Naruto stopped and actually looked like he was thinking about it. Very tempting. Do we have to watch the sacrifice? Fuck no, you can leave if you want. Naruto nodded. You make a very good offer, Hayden. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Was Naruto actually considering it? Hinata swatted Naruto's arm. Naruto, we aren't going to just give Kakashi-san to Hayden. Kakashi sighed. Thank you, Hinata. Naruto nodded. You're right, Hinata. We would need to tie him up first. Kakashi looked at Naruto as he said. This is payback for spiking your ramen with laxatives last week, isn't it? Hell yes it is. You don't mess with the food of the gods. Then don't mess with my books. Hayden and Hinata both watched the argument go on before Hayden asked, Is the blonde fucker really trying to sell me the silver-haired bastard? Because said silver-haired bastard spiked his ramen? Hinata sighed. As much as she loved Naruto, she had to admit he could be childish at times. Even if he had become more mature over the years. I believe they are. Naruto spoke up. Fine, I won't try to give you over to Hayden to be used as a voodoo doll. In exchange you pay for my next ramen binge. Kakashi looked offended. Do you honestly think I'm that stupid, Naruto? At most I'll pay for half of it. That's still a good 20 bowls. Naruto smirked like he had just won Kakashi's entire pool of money in poker. A look Kakashi knew all too well. Deal, I would have also settled for 5 bowls. Sadly it's too late for you to go back on your word, Kakashi. Kakashi began to twitch slightly. 2 minutes left before Itachi could take care of Hayden. Hayden sighed. Okay, are you two done? I mostly let you two argue because it was funny. But I would like to go back to trying to kill you fuckers. Without waiting for an answer, he hurled his scythe at them, moving the cable so it spun in air, turning into a wicked-looking buzzsaw. Hinata spun, her rotation erupting outwards, knocking the scythe into the air. Naruto then jumped into the air and began to make use of one of the black leg techniques he had only recently managed to learn, air walk. He moved at high speeds towards the scythe before he kicked it hard with haki, cracking one of the blades and sending it back at Haiden. Naruto could only use haki on his body, or his Rasengan during battle. For some reason Shingetsu would devour any haki he tried to coat him in. But since Shingetsu's blade was almost completely black, Naruto only found out that fact after Shingetsu told him. According to the sentient blade, it was something that he couldn't help. He wasn't even sure why he devoured haki like that. As Haiden's scythe flew back to the zealot, Kakashi had finished his hand seals and took a deep breath. Lightning style, heavenly spear. From Kakashi's mask came a spear of lightning that collided with the scythe. It acted as a conductor and sent a powerful shock to Haiden, who cursed as he was shocked again. Naruto took advantage of his spasming to form a Rasengan in his hand before coating it in haki. Naruto had long since managed to master combining the two together. The Rasengan had changed to an ebony color, but you could see blue lines spinning within its depths. Naruto tossed it into the air before kicking down towards the ground, and it slammed into the downed Haiden's stomach. Kuro Rasengan, black spiraling sphere. The haki-infused Rasengan began to drill through Haiden's body, before exploding rather violently, blowing a hole through the insane priest's stomach and lower part of his chest, just below the armpits. He essentially had a perfect hole carving through his body, barely connecting his waist to the rest of him. But it just got worse as Naruto landed foot first on Haiden's face before promptly using it as a platform to kick off and backflip back to his team. He landed just as Itachi opened his eyes to reveal his Manjikyu. "I'm ready." With those words, Itachi was soon surrounded by the upper body of an orange spectral warrior covered in armor. Susanoo. Itachi began to walk towards Haiden, who was unable to get up. As he did, a hand appeared, holding gourd. From the gourd's mouth came a blade. Tatsuka blade. With those words, the blade was plunged into what remained of Haiden's chest. Sleep for eternity in a world made of drunken dreams. Goodbye, Haiden the Zealot. With that, Itachi dispelled the spectral warrior and reached up and sighed. His body felt like it had been cooked. He hated using Susanoo. It made every cell in his body feel like it was burning. At least his eyes no longer bled. Naruto looked at the last loyal Uchiha as he asked, "Itachi, are you okay?" Itachi nodded as he said, "Yes, I will be fine." Naruto nodded as he walked over to the crater and began to search. After a few minutes he smiled as he pulled something out of the rubble. Found it! It was the sleeve that Kakuzu had been missing. He came back to the group and handed it to Kakashi. "Hold this, I'm going to summon a dragon that can help us track Kakuzu." Kakashi frowned as he said, "Wouldn't my ninja hounds work just as well?" Naruto shook his head as he said, "I just want to summon her. Although you should probably summon one so he can escort the reinforcements to us." Naruto bit his thumb and flew through the hand seals with ease before slamming his palm on the ground. "Summoning Jutsu!" From the symbols that had spread from his palm appeared a puff of smoke. With a high-pitched roar that sounded more like a child made it than anything else, the smoke cleared. What was in the smoke was an extremely small serpent-like dragon that was about as thick as Naruto's wrist, and about 3 feet long. The little dragon had yellowish-green scales, with a light green and black striped underbelly. From its back were 2 white feathered wings, and its green eyes gleamed with happiness. The little dragon looked around before it saw Naruto. It took into the air with a happy squeak and was soon hovering in front of Naruto. It spoke with a childish voice. "Naruto, I was wondering when you would summon me. What did you summon me for? Do you need me to play with Konohamaru and the others again? Oh, do you need me to track someone?" Naruto took the sleeve back from Kakashi and held it out. "Lyra, I need you to track the man who was wearing this sleeve. He has kidnapped someone important. We need to find him quickly." "Okay, Naruto, I can do that." With those words she grabbed the sleeve and ate it. Kakashi, who was behind Naruto, had just summoned Pakken, who was the fastest hound in the group. He was explaining everything to Pakken when he saw what happened. His eyes went wide as he said, "Naruto, stop her! She's eating the sleeve! We need the sleeve to track Kazuku!" Naruto held up his hand. "It's okay, Kakashi, she's analyzing the residue chakra on his sleeve. That way, if he's anywhere within 1,000 miles, she will be able to find him." After a few moments, Lyra finished chewing and swallowed the sleeve. "I've got his chakra signature, Naruto. He's about 60 miles to the east, and he is moving fast." Kakashi looked at Pakken. "Pakken, stay here. The moment the others arrive, you lead them to us. We will be following Kazuku, and hopefully we can retrieve Yujito." With those words, they all began to run east, with Lyra resting around Naruto's neck, laying overtop his scarf. Hopefully they will be able to catch up. 3 hours later, the group were passing through a valley. Kazuku was about 20 miles away, and they were catching up. It was at that moment that Naruto sensed intent coming towards him from behind and ducked, just as a massive scythe with a spear at the base of the shaft flew past and embedded itself in a wall close by. As it did, a shadow landed on it to reveal Kyoki, the man who had killed an entire village. The man let out a demented cackle as he said, "Well, would you look here, Toby? We got some company. First, we got a lazy porn reading failure. A man who slaughtered his family for peace. A busta stalker who was one step away from being a yandere when the object of her affection noticed her. As well as a blonde orphan who I would love to get to know so we can cause all kinds of chaos." Everyone reacted to their description differently. Hinata flinched when she was described. Naruto twitched, and a vein started pulsing over his eye. Kakashi just shrugged, while Itachi just stared at the man as if he hadn't said anything. A man wearing an orange spiraled mask stuck his head out of the wall behind Kyoki. "Kyoki-san, you might have some issues." "Oh, whatever, I call dibs on Stalker-chan and Orphan-kun." The tick above Naruto's eye got bigger. It wasn't helped when the man in the mask named Toby said, "Aw, Kyoki-san, why are you taking the weaker opponents?" Kyoki waved his hand. "Nah, those two may be weaker than your two opponents, but they are much better suited for working together. They would probably have an easier time against you than Kakashi and Itachi." They all got to see the masked man pout. Over his head was a rain cloud. "But I want to fight the blonde and his stalker." Kyoki sighed as he said, "No, I already claimed Stalker-chan and Orphan-kun. You get Cyclopes-kun and Stoic-san." Everyone but Itachi's sweat dropped at the nickname for the Uchiha clan head. Naruto shook his head. "Really, Stoic-san? Did your creativity die in a barn fire?" Kyoki grinned. "Oh, caddy. Someone's been watching SAO Abridged." "What abridged?" "Oh right, you wouldn't know what that is. Welp, it's murder time." With those words he leapt forward. As he did, he pulled his scythe out of the wall and began to spin in midair. He was soon nothing more than a spinning tornado of death. With a loud crash, his spear and scythe blade both impacted with the two Jonin's weapons, and the three of them were hurled deeper into the valley. Toby sighed as he said, "Kyoki-san is a fun partner. But he's so stubborn." He looked at the two in front of him. "I'm sorry to say, but I can't let you two continue. I will keep you two from getting to Kazuka-san." With those words he reached into his sleeve. Itachi and Kakashi both tensed up, ready to fight. Before Toby pulled out a stick and settled into a stance. "And guard Cyclopes-san and Stoic-san." Kakashi looked at him in confusion. He had been about to push up his Hitaiite when that happened. It wasn't even a staff or a cane, it was a simple stick. He looked at Itachi, who stared at Toby stoically. Kakashi shrugged and pushed up his Hitaiite and drew out his kunai. Battle, Kyoki versus Naruto and Hinata. Naruto and Hinata both barely managed to land feet first on the walls of the valley. On the ground below them was a smirking Kyoki. "Well, you guys blocked that well. I think it's time we have our second round. What do you two think?" Naruto deadpanned as he said, "If we had never seen you again, it would have been too soon, you crazy bastard. Coming from me, that is something." Naruto would be the first to admit he wasn't entirely sane. I mean, who else but an insane person would prank an entire ninja village, multiple times? Kyoki let out a demented cackle as he said, "Ah, Naruto-kun, you say the sweetest things." Naruto shivered. "Please don't call me that. It's bad enough Kabuto calls me that. But you're giving me some serious rapist vibes. Sorry to tell you, wait a minute, no I'm not. I am 100% straight, and my ass is not for sale. So please shoo crazy rapist." Everyone was quiet for a few seconds before the man laughed and said, "Well damn, that is quite the burn, Naruto-kun. But don't worry, I'm not into guys either. Oh, don't worry, I won't target your GF either. I'm not into cucking people." He spun his scythe with a bone-chilling grin. "No, I prefer cutting people to pieces." Shingetsu decided that now was a good time to taunt Naruto. "What is it with you and finding people into blood play?" Kyoki looked at the sword for a moment before he said, "Huh, a talking sword. That's pretty cool." Suddenly Kyoki was in front of Naruto, swinging his scythe at him. Naruto knocked the blade away on instinct. "You know, I used to know a guy who used a talking sword." His grin stretched across his face, distorting it. "I fed the shattered blade to him, while he was still alive, before cutting him apart, piece by piece. He screamed the whole time." Kyoki shuddered. It was orgasmic. Naruto frowned. "Okay, I liked you better before. You gave off less of a rapey feeling. Back then you just seemed like a happy psycho." It was like a switch flipped and Kyoki's entire personality changed. "Well, thank you very much, Naruto. I enjoyed this side of myself as well." With those words he backflipped away from them. As he landed, cheering sounded and 3 numbers appeared behind him, a 10, a 9, and a 10. Kyoki bowed as he said, Thank you. For my next trick, I'm going to kick a blonde Jinchuki's ass." The spear end of Kyoki's scythe lanced forward. Naruto dodged to the left to avoid the spear. As he did, he swung Shingetsu up, knocking it upwards. As that happened, Hinata pulled out several Senbon and launched them at Kyoki. The laughing madman dodged each Senbon with ease. Kyoki grinned as he said, "So, something I've always been curious about. Does the famous Uzumaki stamina translate well to the bedroom?" The fight actually paused when he said that. The two stared at him in shock, while Kyoki was more than happy to stand there grinning at them. It was Shingetsu who broke the silence once again. "It actually does. Don't get me started on how often I had to listen to Uzumaki clan members have sex with their spouses. The goddamn entire clan was hornier than rabbits. Hell, the stories I could tell you about Kushina and Minato." Naruto glared at Shingetsu. "If you continue that sentence, I will make what Mom did to you when you called her a tomato look like a dream." Naruto then looked at Kyoki. "You don't encourage him." Kyoki shrugged. "Hey, I was just curious." "Not my fault." The sword actually had an answer. Kyoki pouts as he says, "Honestly, I don't care about fighting you two. I'm not allowed to kill Blondie there, and I would only kill Stalker if I could kill Blondie. We were basically assigned to stall you. So my heart really isn't in this fight." Naruto frowned as he said, "Out of curiosity, would you be willing to just let us go since you aren't allowed to kill me?" Kyoki actually thought about it. "Fine, but you have to keep me company for 10 minutes. They said I had to delay you, never said how long, or if I had to fight you. So either you up for a game of poker?" Battle, Kyoki vs Naruto and Hinata. Draw, Itachi and Kakashi vs Tobi. Kakashi backflipped to dodge the attack by Tobi. Tobi was waving the branch around willy-nilly, but the fact he kept slipping through all their attacks made them reluctant to actually let the branch hit them. Itachi frowned as he watched the masked man. He couldn't figure out what was going on. While he was acting like a moron, that phasing ability of his was annoying, but it was definitely an S-class ninjutsu as far as he could tell. Itachi still had yet to figure out a way for their attacks to actually hit him, and they had been fighting for 5 minutes now. Tobi had always been the member Itachi had been most weary of. He was the true leader behind the organization, as well as the member Itachi knew the least about, as he had never seen him fight before. The only thing he was certain of was he wasn't Madara like he claimed. Toby looked at Kakashi and Itachi in confusion. Don't you two want to play? Kakashi gave the man a nice smile as he said. But I thought we were already playing. Toby wiggles slightly as he says. Oh, then let's play a new game. With those words he falls into the ground. The two tighten their guard, knowing he could appear anywhere. Suddenly the masked man's voice sounded behind Itachi. Let's play whack-a-mole! Itachi launched himself forward to dodge the massive hammer that impacts the ground, cratering it. Ah, you dodged. Kakashi looked at the crater as he said. I don't think that's exactly how you play whack-a-mole. Toby looked at the hammer. Whoops, didn't mean to change. The hammer disappears and the branch reappears. Okay, we can start again. With those words he sinks back into the ground and reappears in front of Kakashi. Whack-a-mole! Kakashi ducks under the swing and attempts to sweep Toby's leg, only for the kick to pass right through him. Toby just giggles and sinks back into the ground. Itachi, have you figured out anything yet? Itachi nodded. Yes, it took a while to figure out. But he can't attack us when phased. He actually has to be completely solid to strike us. So we need to focus on attacking during that small opening. Toby pouts. Why do you guys want to attack me? I'm harmless. Kakashi looks at Toby before pointing at the crater. Toby looks at it for a moment before he shamelessly says, That was there when I got here. Kakashi gave him a nice smile. Sure it was Toby, I believe you. Toby pouted as he said, Why do I feel like you're mocking me, Cyclopes-san? Kakashi sighs and puts away his kunai. If we're going to be aiming for a single strike, then I guess I have to get serious. He unseals a small shitanto and draws out the blade. The sheath is resealed, leaving him with the blade in his hand. Luckily Higurashi finished repairing the white light chakra saber last week. Toby managed to hold his flinch from seeing the blade again. Memories of when that blade had been used to save his life flashing through his mind. That's the famous white light chakra saber used by the White Fang? Wow, I was a big fan of his as a child. Kakashi chuckled as he said, Yeah, I will be honest. I hated my dad as a kid because of what he did. It took my best friend Obito yelling at me to get it through my thick head that my dad was a hero, not scum. I hope he's resting well in the afterlife with Rin. They both deserve the peace. Normally Kakashi wouldn't be so open. But having his father's old tanto in his hand had made him sentimental. Toby was having a hard time not flinching. His past being brought up so much was affecting him. But before he could attack them, a hand lands on his shoulder, startling him. He turns to see Kyoki shaking his head. Kyoki turns to the two in front of them and says, Well, we did our job. Sorry to fight and run, but I don't want to be dragged into a fight with your reinforcements. With those words, Kyoki bursts into a ball of darkness, taking Toby with him. Toby versus Itachi and Kakashi, draw. Kakashi turns to Naruto and Hinata and looks at Naruto in confusion. Naruto, why are you holding one of your money scrolls? Naruto chuckled sheepishly as he put the green and white scroll in his jacket. Well, Kyoki wasn't exactly all in the fight. So he basically made a deal, where if we played poker for 10 minutes he would leave. Reason it only lasted 5 minutes was I kinda won all his money. Hinata giggled as she said, Naruto ended up winning 100,000 ryo in 5 minutes. Kyoki does not have very good luck, not to mention he doesn't bet small. Itachi raises an eyebrow. Kakashi sighs and says, I'm starting to think the village would have made more money if we just let Naruto be a wandering gambler. How he has such good luck at gambling, I will never know. He could probably bankrupt a country by himself through the casinos. Naruto chuckled as he rubbed the back of his head. Shingetsu spoke up. Pretty sure Lady Luck is trying to get into his pants. Hell might be why Hinata has such terrible luck in gambling. Lady Luck is jealous Hinata has Naruto. In an unknown location, a tall and slim woman with light brown skin, long red hair and dark green eyes sneezed. She is wearing a black backless dress with a white stripe on the left, black gloves, black stiletto heels, and purple-tinted sunglasses that were hanging from the cleavage window in her dress. Coiled up on her left hip is a pitch-black whip. I wonder who's talking about me. Oh, I wonder if I wonder if the latest dose of luck I gave him made him happy. Kyoleth looked up from his book at the rambling and wiggling goddess of luck. She was Risk, one of the strongest goddess of luck, as well as a huge fan of Naruto Uzumaki, especially the one Kyoleth had his eyes on. Note to self, make sure to warn Naruto when offering him a position as a heroic spirit, that Risk might try to rape him. Land of Lightning, Naruto felt a shiver go down his spine. Anyone else feel like they have just had their grave walked over? Kakashi shook his head. No, that's just you, Naruto. It was at that moment that the reinforcements came into view. It was Team Killer B. Tsunade, it seemed, had stayed back at the village. Upon landing, Killer B stepped forward and struck a pose. I've got energy to spare and sparkling charm. The 8 tails of Killer B rockin' the melody. Oh yeah! As he finished his rap, he backflipped and an explosion of red smoke appeared behind him. Naruto, who was already expecting something like this, held up a piece of cardboard with a score on it. The score was an 8. Good introduction, and the explosion was nicely done. But you ruined the timing. Should have set it off when you landed instead of as you finished your rap. Killer B grinned. You know you're not a bad guy. I was worried you would blow like such a sad bye. Kakashi shook his head. We should hurry up so we can catch up to Kazuku and save Yujito. Samly spoke up. Lead the way, please. Oh, make the proposal. Naruto was pacing nervously in his study. In his hand was a small box. He was extremely nervous, something that was rare for him. Watching him pace was Kabuto and Jiraiya, both who looked close to cracking up laughing. Jiraiya decided to be the one to speak up. Naruto, there's no need to be nervous. But what if it goes wrong? I mean, what if lunch is ruined? What if some prank happens that ruins the date? What if I lose the ring? Kabuto chuckled and rolled his eyes. Yeah, I highly doubt that would happen to you. He knocked on a wooden scroll shelf. If it does, then it just means every god in existence hates you. Naruto groaned. Now that you've said that, it's sure to go wrong. Jiraiya sighed as he shook his head. Naruto, Hinata loves you. You love Hinata. Even if the goddamn moon was to fall on the village as you proposed, she would accept it. Hell, from what I heard from Kakashi, she used to follow you around the village like a lost puppy. Marrying you and having a couple kids is her dream. Hell, both Hayashi and Kurenai gave you their blessing. There is no need to be nervous. Hell, you got a better chance with your proposal than I did with Tsunade. Naruto snorted. Pervy Sage, the reason you proposed to Granny Tsunade was because you managed to knock her up in a night of drunken debauchery. She would have held you at sword point after castrating you if you hadn't done so. We both know she wasn't going to let her little Mito grow up without her daddy. Jiraiya shrugged. You have a point, but you have to give me points for no longer riding Ika Ika Paradise. Naruto shrugged. Yeah, I'll give you that. Not to mention your adventure novels are pretty good. Kabuto nodded. Yeah, much better than the smut you used to write. So Naruto-kun, here's what is going to happen. You're going to go get ready for your date. You aren't going to let nerves get in your way. You are going to propose to the woman you love. Then you two will live happily ever after. Knowing how submissive Hinata is around you, happily ever after will involve lots of kinky sex and at least 3 kids. The two of them burst out laughing as Naruto glared at the gray-haired medic. He couldn't even deny what he had said. Hinata was into some kinky stuff. It didn't help how their first time had happened. Naruto had come home on his 16th birthday, to find her tied up naked on his bed like a present. How she managed to look both sexy as hell, and as adorable as a puppy, he will never know. Probably the fact she had somehow mastered the art of puppy dog eyes. After the two had stopped laughing, Naruto went off to get ready. He wasn't going to wear his everyday outfit, although he would keep the hat and scarf. He liked them. Later that evening, Naruto and Hinata were currently on the Hokage monument. They were sitting on his father's head, watching the sunset. The date had gone well. They had gotten lunch at one of Konoha's best restaurants, the Amber Leaf. Afterwards, the two had walked around the village, just enjoying each other's company. Naruto was wearing a black vest, with a burnt orange undershirt, nice black pants and black dress shoes. On his head was his hat, while around his neck was the scarf Hinata had knit for him. Hinata was wearing a light blue sundress with black sandals. On her head was a wide-brimmed sun hat. Her hat was currently on her lap, while her head was on Naruto's shoulder. Hinata smiled as she said, "Today was lovely, Naruto-kun." Naruto nodded as he said, "I'm hoping it will become amazing in a moment. Do you mind letting me up?" Hinata nodded and stood up. "Of course, Naruto-kun." Naruto stood up as well, before he started to speak. "Hinata, ever since we started dating, it's been like a dream for me. As you know, my childhood years were lonely. I became a prankster to get attention, even if it was negative. Even after becoming a genin, I was lonely." Kakashi had gotten sidetracked, and ended up focusing on Sasuke. Sakura was loud and didn't bother training, so I had to spend most of my time training myself. Then one day, I decided to get serious and Irika-sensei helped me out. Shortly after I had the best day of my life, I got to meet my godfather that day. But that wasn't why it was the best day of my life. Because it was the day I truly noticed you. True, it might have been a hard day for you, but it was honestly a day I will always remember. It was the day I got to know the woman I love. After we started dating, it was like every day was a dream. I'm hoping that dream will continue." He got down on one knee. Hinata, realizing what was happening, put her hand on her mouth as Naruto pulled out a small box and opened it. "Hinata, will you marry me?" Hinata was crying as she tackled Naruto, who managed to catch her and hold her up. "Yes, yes, 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 100 times yes." She kissed him hard on the lips. After a couple minutes they broke to breath, and that's when it all caught up to Hinata. Naruto had proposed to her. It was a dream come true. Her mind became overloaded and she fainted. Naruto chuckled as he shook his head. She hasn't fainted like this in years. He pulled the ring out of the box and slipped it on her hand. The Uzumaki clan had a tradition when it came to marriage. There were no engagement rings and wedding rings, there was just one ring. This ring would have seals engraved in it to make it stronger. It also had a few other seals, some of which would make it almost impossible to steal. Naruto had gotten matching silver rings with diamond symbols of an Uzumaki spiral. Hinata's diamonds were lavender, while he had orange diamonds. He sat back down and let the unconscious lay down with her head in his lap. He sealed away her hat and decided to wait for her to wake up. He slowly strokes her hair as he holds her there. Today has been a wonderful day. Lightning style, Heavenly Spear B-rank Ninjutsu. The Heavenly Spear technique is a B-rank lightning style ninjutsu. To use this technique, the user molds lightning chakra in their chest in the form of a ball. It is then pushed out through the mouth, into a tunnel of chakra. The tunnel shapes the ball as it leaves the mouth, straightening it into a spear. The spear is able to pierce through stone with ease. Kuro Rasengan, Black Spiraling Sphere, A-rank bordering S-rank ninjutsu. This is the completed version of the technique Naruto used during the Chuunin Exams. This technique can only be used by Naruto as he is currently the only person who knows Haki. This technique requires him to mix Haki with the chakra of the Rasengan. This allows the technique to be launched, which Naruto does by kicking it with a Haki-infused leg to increase the force. Chapter 12, The Heart Stealer and the Yukiana. A cave in the land of hot water. Kakuzu sealed up the cave and turned to the seal on the ground before he triggered it. When he did, the shadowy image of the Akatsuki leader appeared. His strange eyes seemed to stare through Kakuzu. "Where is Haiden?" Kakuzu replied as he set Yujito's unconscious body down. "He stayed behind to delay the pursers. As we defeated the Jinchuruki, a team of Konoha shinobi showed up. It was the team with Itachi and the other blonde Jinchuruki on it." Pain's eyes narrowed as he said, "I doubt Haiden will be able to delay them for long. Haiden may be immortal, but he is not unstoppable. You will summon the Geto statue, then you will lead them away, Kakuzu. Hopefully that will buy us enough time to seal the Nibi." She will only need a day at most thanks to the seal being open. Kakuzu nodded before summoning the ghetto statue. While he doubted he could defeat them all, especially with Itachi on the team, he was one of the stronger members while a part of the organization, and that was while he was terminally ill. But he was confident he could buy time and escape alive. Maybe he could even kill one of them in the process, and get away with the body. All four of them had rather high bounties. As the shadowy members of the Akatsuki appeared on the fingers of the ghetto statue, Kakuzu left the cave. He turned towards where he knew the border of the land of fire was. He would lead them on a merry little chase before ambushing them. Meanwhile, back in the cave, Pain frowned as they began the process of sealing the nibi. He doubted Kakuzu could buy enough time. He turned to a woman who stood on one of the fingers and said, "You are the one closest to Kakuzu physically. Go and aid him in buying time." The woman nodded and said in a completely emotionless voice, "Yes, sir." Before her shadow vanished from the ghetto statue, leaving the seven of them to focus on sealing the nibi. Several hours later, a plane in the land of hot water, teams Kakashi and Killer Bee had managed to catch up to Kakuzu. They had noticed when they managed to catch up to him that he didn't have Yujuto. Itachi had realized that most likely he had dropped her off at one of the Akatsuki bases, and was serving as a distraction. Kakashi stepped forward. "Kakuzu, where is Yujuto-ni?" The missing nin stared at his fellow masked shinobi as he said, "Now, why would I tell you that, Hatake Kakashi? We are neither friends or allies." It was at that moment that the air began to grow cold. As it did, a woman with a pale face, blue eyes and white hair, appeared beside Kakuzu in a swirl of snow. The heart stealer looked at the woman as he asked, "Taiketsu, what are you doing here?" The woman answered without looking at him. Her voice completely lacked any emotion at all. "Pain-sama sent me to aid you in fighting them. He said it was because I was the one closest to your position." Kakuzu frowned as he looked away from her. "Fine, just don't get in the way." Taiketsu nodded as she said, "I will take care of the traders team. You take care of the Kumo shinobi." The bounty hunter nodded. "Fine, those four have some decent bounties on them anyway." Before the Konoha shinobi could react, the woman appeared in front of them and spun a ribbon she was holding. As she did, snow fell around them and they vanished, reappearing 100 kilometers away. The four shinobi were on guard, and shocked at finding themselves in a completely different field. Naruto looked around in shock. "What the hell? Where are we? Naruto! That woman forcibly moved us 100 kilometers east of where Kakuzu is." Taiketsu nodded. "Yes, I transferred you all here for our fight. I used my snow stream technique to move us here. This way, no one will interfere." Suddenly Shingetsu began to yell, "Naruto! This woman gives off a similar energy signature to that man with the scythe." Taiketsu focused on the sword as she said, "A sentient sword, one that feeds on energy no less. A useful weapon, although Kyoki said nothing about your weapon being a weapon that feeds on energy." She shook her head before raising her hand. White out. From her hand came a vortex of snow and wind that rushed at the four, who all jumped out of the way. Upon impacting the ground, the grass turned to ice. Good instinct. My snow upon contact with someone would freeze them completely solid in seconds. There is no defense against it. Kakashi frowned. The ability to use ice. The only ones who could do that are the shinobi of the Hidden Snow Village and the Yuki clan. The Hidden Snow Village shinobi control already existing snow. So you must be a member of the Yuki clan. Your logic is quite sound, if I was from the elemental nations. All their eyes went hearing that. Taiketsu ignored their reaction and continued to speak. "I am not from this continent, and in fact I am not even human." She held her arms out to her side as her hands transformed into claws of ice and her hair turned into white glowing ice. "I am a Yukiana, Snow Woman. We are born with the ability to control all forms of ice from birth. We do not require the crutch known as hand signs to make use of our abilities." Naruto speaks up. "Is that Kyoki guy not human either?" Taiketsu shook his head. "Kyoki is human, but at times he acts like a demon. A being that is chaos incarnate. He seems to have taken a liking to you. That is not a good thing for you. She waves her claws through the air. Snow Rabbit. From the tips of her claws came multiple baseball-sized snowballs that were shaped like little rabbits. They flew at them quickly and they were forced to separate to avoid the attack. The four landed on the ground to both sides of her. Naruto and Hinata were on her right side, while Kakashi and Itachi were on her left. Before they could charge her through, she slammed her claw into the ground. Snowstorm. Suddenly a blizzard erupted from her body and quickly covered the field in a powerful snowstorm that made visibility almost zero. With Itachi and Kakashi, the two had their respective Sharingans active as they slowly turned around, keeping their backs to each other. It had been close to 6 minutes, and they hadn't been attacked at all. They were forced to use chakra to keep themselves warm. All they could hear was the roar of the wind as the snowstorm raged around them. Kakashi frowned as he realized that the winds would work against them if they tried to use fire techniques. Any idea what we can do about this snowstorm, Itachi? We may be able to overpower it with wind of our own. Sounds like a plan together then. But before they could enact their plan, there was a scream of pain, and the snowstorm began to die down. When the snowstorm cleared, it revealed Taiketsu holding her left arm in pain. Her face finally showed an expression. That of rage and pure hatred, all of it aimed at Naruto. With Naruto and Hinata earlier, Naruto and Hinata quickly moved back to try and keep from being snuck in. Hinata attempted to look around with her Byakugan before she said, "My Byakugan is useless right now, Naruto. The snow is somehow blocking out my ability to see further than a meter away." Naruto frowned as he said, "My haki still works. But I think I know why your Byakugan isn't working right, Hinata. This snowstorm is alive." As Naruto looked around, he could hear the voice of and life signature of all the snowflakes flying around them. This meant that this snowstorm was completely alive. Suddenly the emotionless voice of Taiketsu sounded throughout the snowstorm. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I see, you have access to haki. Well, this makes things more difficult, but not by much. You are indeed correct, this snowstorm is alive." Suddenly the voice sounded beside them. "Not that this knowledge will aid you." The two turned and barely managed to block the ice claw that had slashed at them. The two were pushed by the sheer force that came from the attack. But to their surprise, the claw wasn't attached to anything. It was simply floating in the air. After failing to cause them any damage, it faded back into snow. Naruto frowned as he said, "Hinata, do you have any ideas to deal with this? Usually I would go for the obvious answer of a fireball. But all the wind would just feed the fire and trap us in a firestorm." Before Hinata could answer, Naruto suddenly turned and lashed out with a haki-infused kick to the side. His foot clashed with a claw made of ice and shattered it. When he did, Taiketsu's voice sounded once again. "So you know armament haki as well. That is good to know. Not that it will save you. You will all die and soon be nothing more than statues from my collection." The ice claws began to reappear around them, circling them as they multiplied. Soon there were close to 20 around them on all sides. Naruto and Hinata slipped into easily defensible stances, ready to try and block as many attacks as they could as the claws continued to grow in number. It was at that moment that a certain power of Naruto's decided to finally make an appearance again. A power that hadn't appeared since that day on Kumo's Terra Peaks. A shadow appeared on the back of Naruto's coat. Before, with a loud, insane laugh, a figure erupted from Naruto's back. The figure was wearing a black robe that seemed to absorb the light and covered most of its body. On its face was a detailed white and red ceramic kitsune mask that stretched out in the front like a snout, and had a mouth that opened slowly, releasing a stream of black smoke. Behind the figure are 9 bone tails that end in bone blades. In its hands is a massive scythe with a black blade. The figure began to spin its scythe. It spun so fast that it was simply a blur. As it did, it began to cut apart the various icy claws in almost an instant. As it finished, a scream of pain sounded from the woman as the snowstorm began to die. When it did, it revealed Taiketsu holding her left arm in pain as blood dripped from it. She hissed. her voice actually having emotion in it for the first time. A projection, of course the brat has a goddamn projection. Kakashi frowned as he said. Are you talking about Naruto's avatar? Is that what is called in this place? It doesn't matter what you call it. That projection is just delaying the inevitable. Nothing more than an amateur who hasn't fully awakened their projection. As she spoke, the figure behind Naruto flickered and disappeared. You can barely support the projection, you have no chance. I won't be holding back anymore. She raised her arms as she howled out. Field 0! From where she was standing, the air seemed to lose all color. It soon reached them and they all shivered as the temperature dropped. Upon it reaching Naruto, he grit his teeth and began to spin, igniting his leg and lifting it up. The heat from the leg pushed away the chill as he declared, Diable Jam! At the same time, Itachi closed his eyes before opening his eyes to reveal his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Kakashi pulled out his white light chakra saber and channeled chakra into it. Hinode began to glow in Hinata's hand and the rings jingled as she spun it. The combined chakra output pushed away the cold. The snow woman lifted her claws. Ice lance. From her claws came a barrage of ice spears that the group worked together to block. Moment there was a lull. Itachi raced through hand seals and declared, Fire style, fireball jutsu! Itachi released a large fireball from lips, which flew towards the white-haired woman. The woman waved her hand through the air. As she did, a white glittery trail followed her claws. Snow flower! Each of the glitters became a flower which interlocked and formed a flower-shaped shield. The fireball impacted on the shield and dispersed, barely damaging the shield. As the fire cleared, Kakashi appeared in front of the shield and cut through it with his tanto. The glowing blade cut through the shield like a hot knife through butter. As the shield fell to the ground, Hinata was in front of Taiketsu, her staff coming in from the right to strike her enemy. The snow woman blocked it with her right claw. The force of the strike caused the ground to crater, but she didn't stagger. Naruto appeared on her left, his leg held up as he spun and kicked at her. Bien cute, grill shot! Well cooked grill shot! Taiketsu didn't even bother looking. In response to his kick, an ice wall rose up and blocked the kick. The heat and the strength of the kick clashed with the coldness and hardness of the wall. After a few seconds the wall shattered. But by then Taiketsu had kicked away Hinata and jumped out of the way of another attack, this time delivered by Kakashi. Itachi was the one who noticed it. This field is weakening us. The icy woman looked at him as she said, Of course. You all have no chance in my field 0. Naruto grit his teeth. He had a feeling that he only had 2 ways to counter this technique. She had mentioned his avatar and being unable to keep it up. So it was possible it would be able to counter this field. But he had one more option. He could possibly overpower the field with overwhelming heat. But that would mean using that technique, and he really didn't want to use it, he hadn't perfected it yet. But it was their best chance. Guys, I have a way to counter this. But I need a minute. The 3 shinobi nodded and charged at Taiketsu. The snow woman thought that Naruto was simply being optimistic, and didn't even bother to fight seriously against the weakened Jonin. The only thing that could fight her field was with another projection, or with overwhelming, blistering heat. But the boy could barely summon his projection, and the fire kick he used was nowhere near powerful enough. Sadly, Taiketsu did not know the full strength of the blackleg style. If she had, she would have targeted him from the start. Naruto sheathed Shingetsu and closed his eyes. As he did, he began to dive into his mind. The technique he was about to use is one of the most powerful abilities of the blackleg style. It is known as Hell Memories. By diving into his own memories, he can use the negative emotions tied to bad memories to ignite his body in extremely powerful flames. It is said that the developer of this style made use of being chased by what he referred to as abominations for 2 years. Naruto, on the other hand, made use of the loneliness of his younger years. But for him, there was a second step. Since his darkness and light are currently separated, he needed to link with Yami to use this technique. Naruto found himself in his mindscape. In front of him was his dark half, still wearing the ceramic kitsune mask he had when they first met. So we are going to try it again, huh? Yes, are you ready, Yami? The mask on his dark half's face seemed to smile. Of course, let's go, partner. The two reached out and grabbed each other's hands. As they did, a fusion of black and white energy appeared and fused together. But instead of becoming gray, it instead became a dark blue. In the real world, Naruto's eyes shot open as he said, "Hell memories!" As he said this, his body burst into dark blue flames. These flames were hot enough that the field began to get pushed back. The air began to regain its color, as Taiketsu's eyes went wide as she turned towards him. How is he putting off this much heat? I'm losing control of my projection. I need to give it more power, if I don't it will be destroyed. With a growl she increased the energy sustaining the field. Normally she was almost completely emotionless, this was because of her powers over ice. She was more connected to ice than most Yukiana. But just like with other Yukiana, her powers were tied to her emotional state. Her parents had always taught her to stay cold and her emotions were completely controlled. This was to keep her powers from harming others and herself with her powers. But now she was being forced to feel emotions, this was causing her cryokinesis to grow stronger and uncontrolled. The increased strength of the projection affected the three Jonin who had been buying Naruto time. Hinata, Kakashi, and Itachi began to move so much slower. It was as if the entire world was weighing them down. As they moved, ice began to slowly cover their bodies in spots. But Naruto was completely fine through, the flames from hell memories were pushing back the cold around him. Hinata managed to speak up, her words slowed. Naruto. It's hard to move. Taiketsu growled as she looked at the flaming Naruto. I should have just killed you from the start. Those flames, they're emotion flames. I didn't realize a brat like you knew how to use such a powerful technique. Your fire may keep me from freezing the other three solid, I can at least keep them out of our fight. Naruto glared at the snow woman in front of him. Yeah, I guess today is your unlucky day. But you won't be beating me. He lifted his left leg straight into the air as he said, Welcome to the Crab Cafe, can I take your order? As he said that, his leg was brought down and created a small crater in the ground. Taiketsu growled once again as she raised her two claws. She was ready to tear the blonde brat to pieces. She wouldn't kill him, but he would wish she did. She charged at Naruto and swiped at him. Naruto met the freezing claw strike with a fiery kick. The clash of the two created a shockwave that caused any loose cloth to flutter. Team Killer Bee vs. Kakuzu. Moments after Taiketsu disappeared with Team Kakashi, Kakuzu chuckled. Killer Bee looked at the bounty hunter as he said, Yo, what is so funny? I will cut what is making you so sunny. Kakuzu simply shrugged off his coat as he said, Oh no, it's just that thanks to Taiketsu, I can capture another Jinchuruki. But she was right, I won't hold back. His back was now visible, revealing 4 animal masks on it. His back twitches slightly before it ripped open and out of it flew 3 black masses that landed around him. With that his back resealed itself, leaving only a single mask with a dark blue mark on it. The 3 black masses began to change, and soon took shape. All 3 stood around Kakuzu, their bodies made of black threads. The first had a mask with red markings on it. It was obviously a 4-legged animal of some kind, except it was standing on 2 legs. The second had a mask with yellow markings, and its body was deformed, but it was obviously meant to walk on 2 legs. While the final mask had the mask with the light blue markings. It was another bipedal being of some kind. Kakuzu smiled as he said, I shall kill you 3 and take the Jinchuruki in to have his bijou removed. All with the help of my Earth Grudge Fear. Then I will turn your heads in for the bounties on them. With those words the 3 masses charged at Samui, Omoe, and Karui, forcing them to back away and the battle erupted into 4 smaller battles. Killer Bee looked at Kakuzu as he threw all his blades into the air. They all landed in various places on his body. He stood in his unique pose as he said, Quickly take a look. 'Cause now I'll give you a taste of my hook. Omo versus Fire Mask. Omo cut at the threads that got too close to him as he backed up. He frowned as he watched the masked beast in front of him, only blocking the attacks. He needed to figure out what exactly this thing was and what it could do. He had to be careful till he figured it out. He was forced to flip backwards to dodge a small fireball launched at him. He didn't trust it to be as weak as it seemed. He soon found out his instincts were on the ball as upon impact it exploded into a firestorm that he was at the edge of. A couple minutes passed as Omo dodged each fireball that was launched at him, while cutting apart any threads launched at him. It seems that this thing can only use fire and those threads to attack. It may be able to attack with its body if I got close, but otherwise it has a pretty limited arsenal. With that figured out, Omo charged forward. As he got close, the beast sent a barrage of threads at Omo. In response, Omo quickly swung his blade. Cloud-style crescent moon beheading. He swung in a large crescent moon arc, cutting through all the threads in one move. After cutting all the threads apart, he charged in close and began to strike at the beast. Omo unleashed a shift barrage of slashes on the beast made of threads. Each slash cutting apart threads and sending them flying. Each counterattack from the beast was dodged. It was obvious that the beast wasn't very smart. Most likely it was because Killer Bee was distracting Kakuzu. Suddenly the beast got in a lucky strike and its arm pierced through Omo's chest. The young swordsman coughed up blood and slumped forward. Only when the beast was about to pull back, the swordsman puffed into smoke, revealing a large rock. Suddenly a voice called out behind it. Cloud-style deception beheading. A slash raked across the beast's body, cutting away an arm entirely, while leaving the other hanging uselessly. As the beast turned to Omo, two shadow closes appeared on both sides. Their blades were descending to slash into the beast. It jumped onto the air to dodge the attack, only for the real Omo to appear, use the shadow close that had attacked with the deception beheading as a springing board and bring down his blade. Reverse miss beheading. The blade came down, splitting the wire beast down the middle. At the same time it cut open the mask, destroying the heart inside it. Omo wasn't aware that the mask held the heart controlling the beast. He simply struck it as it was the only point of the beast that was different. As the shadow clones all dispelled, the beast fell to the ground dead. It was now nothing more than a bundle of threads. It had no life, and it was no longer able to fight. Omo had won his fight quite quickly. Battle, Omo vs. Fire Mask. Winner Omo. Battle, Samui vs. Water Mask. Samui ducked under a jet of water before spinning out of the way of threads that were launched at her. She cut upwards with her lightning-clad tanto, severing the threads. She then went through several hand seals before she raised her hands aiming at the stream of water she had just been forced to dodge. Lightning release, electromagnetic murder. The lightning flew from her hand and connected with the water and quickly raced up it, hitting the beast which let out a roar as it was shocked. The beast began to twitch. As it did, Samui raced forward and stabbed her tanto into its mask. She had noticed the fact the mask was important. It was the only part that had been visible before it had been released. It was also the only part that wasn't made of threads. Thus logic stated that it was likely important. Her lightning-enhanced blade stabbed easily through the ceramic. She pulled her blade out before flipping back and watching the enemy. When she did, the beast shuddered and blood seeped out of the cracks before it fell to the ground dead. Samui frowned. That was an easy fight, cool. But it seems almost too easy. She turned to where Killer Bee and Kakuzu were fighting. Her teacher was a blur that kept clashing with Kakuzu. Is it because Killer Bee sensei is distracting Kakuzu? Battle, Samui vs. Water Mask. Winner, Samui. Battle, Karui vs. Lightning Mask. Karui cursed as she slashed apart another wave of threads. This opponent was annoying. If it wasn't the threads, then it was the lightning blasts. But she had managed to find the pattern in its attacks. She dodged another blast of lightning before rushing forward. She had noticed that after the beast released lightning it would freeze up for a couple seconds. It was this moment she rushed forward, trying to get closer. She wanted to end this quickly. As she got close she slashed forward. Cloud-style front beheading! Her powerful slash easily cut through one of the beast's arms, sending it flying. She then jumped back. She couldn't stay close for too long. If she did, she got in range of its limbs. She blocked another wave of threads and dodged one more lightning blast. It was at that point she decided to target the mask. She summoned a shadow clone as she ran. Her clone got in front of her and launched her into the air. As she did, she spun slightly, similar to Killer Bee when he is attacking before bringing down her blade on the mask. Cloud-style falling guillotine. Her blade cut through the mask, easily slicing it in two. As she fell, she kicked off its torso and shot back, landing on the ground. Just in time to see it fall to the ground. It was at that moment she noticed that her blade had blood on the blade. She flicked it off as she said, "Could that mask have contained the core of that creature?" Battle Carry vs. Lightning Mask. Winner Carry. Okay, I know those last two fights were really short. But it was hard for me to pull off their fights. Not to mention Kakuzu, while he had an awesome power, was one of my least favorite of Akatsuki. Thus I honestly don't remember as much about how his masks act during battle. Killer Bee vs. Kakuzu. Killer Bee spun through the air like a demented buzzsaw. His blades clashed with the threads that erupted from Kakuzu. While they couldn't stop him fully, they could divert him slightly. Killer Bee landed on his hand and spun. As he did, he tossed several blades into the air and as they fell redirected them at Kakuzu, who kept redirecting them with his threads. Kakuzu jumped back and looked at Killer Bee as he said, "An interesting Kenjutsu style. It is almost impossible to tell what your next attack is. It's also extremely quick, but not much power behind it." Killer Bee grinned around the blade as he said, "First I'm going to float and fly like a butterfly. Then I'll sting you like a killer bee." Killer Bee launched back into the air and began a new barrage on the bounty hunter, forcing him on the defensive. Kakuzu gritted his teeth as he redirected each attack. His earth spear would be useless against his opponent thanks to the lightning chakra being streamed through his blades. Suddenly Kakuzu saw an opening and kicked the Jinchuruki back. The kick connected with Killer Bee's chest and sent him flying back. As he flew back, Kakuzu quickly went through several hand signs before releasing a tornado of wind. Wind release, pressure damage! Killer Bee managed to jump out of the way of the attack. Upon impact, a dome of sharp wind blades was kicked up. A dome that Killer Bee just barely dodged. Killer Bee retaliated by launching into the air and throwing several of the blades towards Kakuzu. The missing Nin dodged the blades, moving out of the way, but not without getting a nick on one arm. Killer Bee landed on the ground and quickly collected his blades before jumping at Kakuzu again. Kakuzu ducked under another slash from Killer Bee before punching at his foe's stomach. Killer Bee managed to dodge the strike and spun on his hand, launching multiple slashes at Kakuzu with his legs. Killer Bee was trying to get a good read on his skill level before he pulled out the big guns. He wanted to know exactly how much of Gyuki's chakra he would need to defeat the missing Nin. If he used too much, he could hurt his comrades with friendly fire. The two separated after one more clash. Killer Bee grinned. He had figured just how much he needed to fight and win against Kakuzu. But that wasn't all. He tossed all his blades into the air and let them around them. After they landed, Killer Bee pulled out a book and began to write as he mumbled. This surprised the bounty hunter enough that he didn't attack at that moment. Killer Bee closed the book as he said, "I'm doing hella fine. I just wrote the baddest rhyme, thank you." 2. He then raised his arm. As he did, red chakra began to form around him. It took the form of a bull with two tails behind him. He would start off lighter to weaken his opponent before working up to more power. Before Kakuzu could react, Killer Bee raced forward, his arm outstretched. Lariat! Killer Bee clotheslined the bounty hunter with his outstretched arm, sending him flying. Kakuzu crashed into a boulder, shattering it as he spit up blood. He hadn't expected that attack. He thought the Jinchuruki was messing around. It seems he was testing him. The combination of the force of the hit and the force of hitting the strike had shattered the only remaining mask on his back, destroying his wind heart. After a couple seconds he stood up. Damn it, wind hearts are so hard to find. Now I need to find a replacement. Kakuzu glared at Killer Bee as he said, "I thought you were just a fool who couldn't take anything seriously. I won't underestimate you anymore." With those words, threads shot out of his body. The threads quickly reached out and connected with the three collapsed beasts. When they did, the collapsed threads twitched before they all surged back to him and fused with his body. As they did, his body was engulfed in them, surrounding him like a cloak, with 4 arms of threads behind him. When he spoke, his voice had become extremely raspy, as if his throat had become as dry as a desert. "I won't be holding back anymore." Killer Bee frowned as he shouted at his comrades, not even bothering to rap when he did. "Oh moi, Karui Samui, get out of here! I can't risk you 3 getting caught in the middle of this fight." Karui began to answer. "But Killer Bee Sensei." She stopped when Samui grabbed her shoulder and shook her head. Karui sighed and followed the 3 as they left. When they did, Killer Bee began to call on more of Gyuki's chakra. As he did, his body changed as he became clad in reddish and black chakra and his eyes became white circles. His body changed into a bull-like figure, with 5 tails behind him. "When I transform into my true form, a beast you must meet, yeah? Cower before the power of the beast." With those words he charged at Kakuzu. Their fists clashed. As they did, Killer Bee's tails countered the arms of threads that were coming at him. Killer Bee leaned back his head before thrusting his forehead forward hard, impacting on the bounty hunter's forehead. The S-rank Missing Nin made use of his Earth Spear technique to harden his head, hoping to make the Jinchuruki take all the damage. Instead, they both suffered damage. They both stumbled back slightly before the Kakuzu launched his thread arms at Killer Bee, who responded in kind with 4 of his tails. As the 2 sides clashed, a 6th tail began to form behind Killer Bee. Moment it did, the 2 free tails moved in front of Killer Bee's open mouth and began to circle. As they did, a ball of black and white particles began to form. Kakuzu's eyes widened at seeing what was forming and tried to get away. But he couldn't. His thread arms were locked up by the tails and he needed time to disconnect from his body. He immediately focused on trying to disconnect. He just hoped he would be in time. Killer Bee finished the bijou bomb and said, "Your illusions I obliterate, then you I shall annihilate." Bijou bomb! With those words, the ball of compressed chakra was released and a shockwave was released. Kakuzu screamed as he vanished from sight, the blast's light making it impossible to see him get erased. When the light cleared, Kakuzu was nowhere in sight. Killer Bee waited a few minutes before he asked Gyuki, "Do you sense the full Edo?" Inside Killer Bee's mindscape, the 8-tailed Ushioni was resting in the sea part of the mindscape. "I don't sense anything." "I think you killed him, Bee." Killer Bee frowned as he let the chakra slip back into the seal. "That seemed way too easy. That may have made me queasy." Meanwhile, close to 50 kilometers away from the site of the battle lay Kakuzu, who was breathing deeply and holding his side. He wasn't sure how he escaped. All he remembered was a flash of red and then he found himself here. He slowly stood back up. He needed to get to one of Akatsuki's hidden bases and recover. Then he needed to find some new hearts. He was lucky he had survived that fight. Battle Killer Bee vs. Kakuzu. Winner Killer Bee. Battle Naruto vs. Taiketsu. The battle had been going on for close to 5 minutes now. Naruto's kicks would clash with Taiketsu's claw strikes, neither bothering with long-range attacks, as Taiketsu's icicles would be melted by the fireballs launched by Naruto, while Naruto's fireballs would be put out by the water of the melting ice. Naruto dropped onto his hands and spun in a circle, his legs held down and unleashed a barrage of helicopter kicks. Taiketsu blocked each attack that she could with her claws, through 1 or 2 kicks broke through her defense, knocking her back. Naruto took advantage of her being knocked off balance, and jumped into the air and kicked forward with 1 leg. Diable Muton shot! His leg moved so quickly it looked like he was simply shaking it when he was kicking her multiple times. The multiple kicks hit her torso and sent her flying back. He landed on the ground and launched himself after her. Taiketsu flipped over and slammed her claws into the ground to slow herself. Once she had slowed down, she looked up and glared at the enemy in front of her. She launched herself forward, her claws outstretched. The claws clashed with the raised leg of Naruto. Currently the two were closely matched, with Naruto just barely holding the smallest advantage thanks to his haki. She knew if this fight continued, she was possibly the one who would win. She just hadn't expected this blonde brat to have a projection, as well as the ability to use emotion flames. The only two things that could counter her field zero. She would need to find a chance to escape. This brat was the worst possible opponent for her. It was no wonder Kyoki liked him. It didn't help that currently she was being restrained by the rules of the world. They still had 2 months before they could show their full strength. She would find a chance to escape, and let Kyoki deal with the brat at a later day. As she was thinking, she blocked another kick from Naruto. She was faster than him and had better reflexes. But he was stronger and could sense her attacks coming. Not to mention he had a better defense thanks to his haki. She pushed Naruto away and the two began to circle each other. The worst part was the fact her projection was burning through so much of her reserves to keep it up. But she had to keep it up, or it would become a 4-on-1 battle. Not a good idea with how she's already at a disadvantage. She slammed her claws back into the ground as she called out, "Ice room!" When she called that out, a sphere of ice surrounded her, blocking an incoming kick. The sphere held strong even after 4 kicks. It took in all 10 kicks to break the sphere. When it was broken, Taikatsu took advantage of the opening to slash her claws across Naruto's chest, actually managing to score a hit on him, although it was barely a scratch as Naruto's haki had blocked most of it. Naruto leaned back and kicked up, knocking her back. He flipped off his hand and frowned. He was starting to run low on haki. It was how she managed to get through his defense, even if only barely. Naruto didn't realize it, but the field was starting to weaken. Naruto charged at his enemy and began to unleash a barrage of kicks on the enemy. To his surprise, he found that Taikatsu seemed to be moving slower. It seemed he wasn't the only one being affected by the long fight. Yami's voice sounded through Naruto's mind. "Naruto, we won't be able to sink much longer. You need to finish this battle as quickly as possible." Taikatsu breathed out as she locked her claws together. The icy claws fused together into a single spiral-shaped lance. "I don't care about capturing you right now. If I weaken you, it will make it easier for the one assigned to capture you. Fate-shattering lance!" She lunged forward, her spiral-shaped spear thrust at Naruto's heart. Naruto's right leg turned obsidian black. As it did, the blue flames of hell memories began to focus on his leg. He lifted his leg and kicked out. "Diable jam, cross strike, devil leg, but strike." The fiery kick and the icy lance clashed. The two forces clash caused a powerful shockwave. The shockwave was powerful enough to knock the 3 half-frozen shinobi onto their backs. The lance seeked to pierce the leg that was clashing with it, but the haki and force behind said kick. After a minute of clashing, the lance began to break and soon it shattered. Naruto's kick continued forward and impacted on Taikatsu's body. But instead of impacting on flesh and blood and sending her flying, it shattered the body, revealing it was made of ice. The remains of the ice clone fell to the ground. As the clone shattered, the field being cast fell completely. The 3 shinobi on the ground found that the weight that was being put on them vanished. The chakra being used to fight the chill quickly began to warm their bodies up. Soon all 3 of them were able to move, and they got up / they moved to Naruto, who was staring at the shattered pieces of the clone as Hinata asked, "Are you okay, Naruto?" Naruto nodded. "I'm just trying to figure out when she switched out with a clone." He shook his head as he said, "Let's get back to Killer Bee. Since Kakuzu is taken care of, I'm going to have to resummon Petit and have her eat something Yujito owns so we can track her down." Petit had been sent back shortly after the fight had begun. That way she wouldn't get hurt in the battle, and would be able to continue guiding them. Naruto turned to the west. "Petit mentioned that we had been moved 100 kilometers directly east of where we were originally. So we should head west and we should be able to meet up with Killer Bee's team." He shivered and fell to the ground, the drain of his fight just now hitting him. "After I rest for a few minutes." Kakashi shook his head and said as Hinata fussed over Naruto, "I never thought I would see the day Naruto Uzumaki would be low on energy." Naruto, who was currently resting his head on Hinata's lap, flipped Kakashi off. "Oh, screw you, Kakashi. You try using a technique you haven't mastered, your haki, and fighting against nail-biting cold for close to 10 minutes and not be drained. A few minutes passed before Naruto stood back up. Okay, let's go. Hopefully they will have something that can be used to track Yujito. With those words, the four shinobi took off running. An hour later, with Killer Bee's team, Killer Bee and his team were resting after their battle. They had to wait for Naruto and the others to arrive, as none of them had summons that could track Yujito. They weren't a tracking team, they were an assault team. While they could follow a trail left behind by an enemy, they weren't skilled in it. It was at that moment that Team Kakashi arrived. Killer Bee raised a hand as he said, "Yo Nino!" Naruto shook his head. "I'm going to summon Petit, but I need something of Yujito's that she can use to track her." Killer Bee pulled out a small scroll as he said, "Yeah, I grabbed this from the kitty cat's apartment. This should help us find where they loom." Naruto nodded as he summoned Petit. The small dragon reappeared in a puff of smoke and immediately flew to Naruto. "Naruto, you need me to track that Yujito lady, right?" Naruto nodded as he unrolled the scroll. "Killer Bee got something from her apartment. It should allow you to track her." He unsealed the item, and was surprised at what it was. "Seriously, Bee, this is what you grabbed?" Killer Bee shrugged. "You need something to track by. What better than that black bra?" What was resting on the scroll was a lacy black bra. It seems that Killer Bee had grabbed one of Yujito's bras to be used to track her with. Naruto facepalmed, while Petit shrugged. "It should work." Before anyone could say anything, the little dragon grabbed the bra and ate it quickly. As everyone on Killer Bee's team looked at her in shock, she turned and said, "She is about 200 kilometers in that direction." Naruto nodded as he said, "Well, you all heard her, let's go." Petit settled on his shoulders as they quickly took off. They still had time, as Gaara had taken 3 days to be drained. But what they didn't take into account was the fact Yujito didn't have the seal locked anymore. Her seal was wide open so she could synchronize with Matatabi better. This massively cut down on the time it would take. In the cave with Yujito, an hour and a half later, the statue closed its mouth as the flow of energy stopped. When it did, the dead body of Yujito fell to the ground. Pain spoke up. "It is done!" One of the shadows cackled as he said in an insane voice that was quite familiar. "Good, I want to go fuck up some more shit now." With those words, Kyoki disappeared. The others vanished, and soon so did the statue. This left the corpse of Yujito laying in the middle of the dark cave, all alone. Yujito, 29-year-old jonin of Kyumo, was dead. Suddenly a shadowy figure appeared in the cave, standing over the cooling corpse of the Kyumo jonin. The shadowy figure looked at the figure before placing a gem on their forehead. The gem on the corpse's body glowed, and so did his body. With that, the gem and shadowy figure disappeared, leaving a lightly breathing and unconscious Yujito in the dark cave. 20 minutes later, the boulder blocking the cave exploded from the impact of Hinata's super strength-enhanced staff strike. The 8 shinobi quickly entered the cave, spread out to cover all directions. Killer Bee and Itachi were in the front, Kakashi and Samui covering the right, Omoi and Karui covering the left, while Hinata and Naruto brought up the rear. They found that the cave was almost completely empty. The only thing inside was the bloody and unconscious body of Yujito. Killer Bee rushed over and started to check over her as he spoke, dropping the wrapping because of the seriousness. "Hinata, get over here. I found Yujito, and she's still alive." Hinata rushed over, Hinode transforming back into her necklace. Moment she got to Yujito's side, she ran a diagnostic jutsu on the woman. Her face soon fell into a frown. After close to 5 minutes, she sighed as she said, "She's alive, and she will survive. But her chakra system is completely shot. The way it's been damaged, she won't be able to build enough chakra to use ninjutsu, genjutsu, or fuinjutsu. Best she could do is reinforce her body and maybe walk on walls. Anything more chakra intensive won't work at all, her coils are just too damaged." Killer Bee shook his head. "At least she's alive. Is she safe to transport?" Hinata shook her head. "Naruto, make a stasis scroll, please. I don't want to risk transporting her right now." Naruto nodded as he pulled out a blank scroll. Give me a minute. He quickly made a scroll before giving it to Hinata, who set it up near Yujito, and sealed her away before handing the scroll to Killer Bee. Here, Bee, the moment we get to Kumo, you need to take Yujito to the hospital. While she is not in danger, I doubt she will wake up anytime soon. Bee nodded and began to rap again. I got this, don't you worry. She'll be there so fast my image will be blurry. Itachi was looking around the cave with a frown on his face before he said, It seems Pain was right. When everyone looked at him, he said, While syncing with your Bijou partner makes you much stronger, it also lessens the time needed to remove said Bijou. As most of the time removing the Bijou has to do with breaking the seal. He looked at the stasis scroll as he said, But how did Yujito survive the extraction? Naruto spoke up. Could Matatabi have interfered like Shikaku did with Gaara? Hinata walked over and said, No, it wasn't her. If she had, Yujito's chakra coils wouldn't be so damaged. Not to mention, I doubt Akatsuki would leave her here alive. From what I could tell, her heart had stopped for a minute before it was restarted, and just enough of the damage was fixed to allow her to live. Kakashi, who had walked up to the other three, nodded. That's a good point. You three leave shadow clones here to investigate the cave. You may be able to figure out what exactly happened. The three nodded and each left a couple shadow clones behind before they all left the cave. As they left the cave, a shadowy figure watched them leave. Soon I will be able to make my move. Several hours later, the rescue team arrived at Kumo. Kumo had the stasis scroll with Yujito in it in one of his pouches. The guards noticed who they were. One of them stepped forward. Killer Bee-san, did you all manage to find Yujito? Samui spoke up to spare them Killer Bee's rapping. Killer Bee has her in a stasis scroll Uzumaki made for us. She's in serious condition and needs to be taken to the hospital. The second guard nodded and spoke up. The Reikage wants both teams to report to his office as soon as possible. He needs a report on the mission. Killer Bee nodded. You all go ahead. I'll make sure she's dropped off into bed. Everyone groaned at the bad rap before Killer Bee disappeared in a lightning body flicker. Samui turned to the Konoha team and said, Please follow me. 20 minutes later, A nodded after he finished listening to both teams' reports. Killer Bee had arrived about 10 minutes ago. I'm glad that Yujito is alive, even if she can no longer continue being a shinobi. She was a skilled shinobi, and she will be missed among our ranks. But the fact she is still alive is good. But the information about that woman, the ability to use powerful ice ninjutsu without hand signs, not to mention the fact she is from outside the elemental nations, that is not a good sign. Tsunade sighed as she said, We're lucky that we came across the battle when we did. If we had been any later, then we wouldn't have been able to find her as easily. A sighed. Your team should spend the night before you head back to Konoha. Naruto frowned. If you don't mind me asking, what about the Jinchuruki training for me? It will have to wait 2 months. The special training ground only opens at certain times of the year. In 2 months the cave should be open. Naruto nodded. It wasn't unheard of certain locations being unavailable until certain times. Most likely the training ground had seals that needed to charge, thus making it unusable until they are charged. He could wait 2 more months. Or make 3 incidents that caused Naruto to stop using Shadow Clone Wave tactics. Incident 1, the Flash Mob, 6 months after the Kumo Chuunin Exams. Naruto and Hinata had taken a mission to escort the ambassador of Konoha to the embassy in Suna. After they had escorted him to the embassy, Hinata had headed off to the hot spring to relax. Meanwhile, Naruto had gone to visit Gaara. He found the young redhead in a training ground practicing with what seemed to be a cane. When Naruto entered the training ground, Gaara spoke up without turning. Hello, Naruto. Give me a minute and then we can speak. The young man set the plain cane against the table he had set up before wiping off his face on a towel he had close by. Once he was done, he turned to Naruto. Hello, Naruto. Hey there, Gaara. Thinking of taking up cane fighting? Gaara nodded as he looked at the practice cane as he said, Yes, Our last fight during the Chuunin Exams made me realize I needed to change up my fighting style more. I was becoming overspecialized. Thus I decided to learn how to fight with a weapon. Why a cane through? Gaara looked at the cane as he said. Do you remember the story I told you about my uncle Yashimaru? You mean the one who tried to assassinate you on your dad's orders because he hated you? Gaara nodded. We recently found a letter left behind by my uncle among his stuff. Apparently it was supposed to be delivered to me after he died, but it was overlooked. In it, he explained the truth behind the assassination attempt. Raza blackmailed him, he threatened Temari and Kankuro's life if he didn't try to kill or break me. Gaara's voice hitched as he said. He told me that he saw me as the son he never had. He left me some scrolls on his signature fighting style, which revolved around a cane and was highly mobile. I am trying to learn it to honor him. I plan to have a special cane made for me. I was hoping you wouldn't mind doing the sealing work. Sure, Gaara, I don't mind. Hey, how about a spar? I could make a large amount of shadow clones so you can train dodging their attacks. Gaara nodded and grabbed his cane, slipping easily into the starting stance. Once he was ready, Naruto asked, How many clones do you want? 50, 100, 200? Gaara thought for a moment. 50 will work for now, Naruto. Naruto made the requested 50 shadow clones and turned to them as he began to speak, ignoring the fact they were still covered up by the smoke. Okay men, you all know what your jobs are, so I will leave it to you to aid Gaara in his training. What the fuck? The smoke had finally cleared, but his 50 shadow clones weren't exactly what he was expecting. Both him and Gaara stared at the group in shock. Near the front was a very tall muscular man with blue hair. A little behind him was a very busted orange-haired girl with 2 hairpins. Near her was another busted woman, this time with white hair and a red dress. Nearby was a very tall man with an eye patch, a rather unique spiky hairstyle with bells in his hair, and a small pink-haired girl on his shoulder. But they weren't the only ones. Each and every single one of his shadow clones was transformed into characters from pop culture. Play Carameldenson? I am not sorry. Before they could react, music began to play. It was extremely peppy, and then someone began to sing in a language that neither of them understood, and the clones began to dance. It was like a train wreck, they couldn't look away. It was a very cute dance, but some of the transformed clones made it horrifying. Like the eye-patched man who had an extremely bored expression. When a new verse began, the crowd parted to reveal 2 clones in particular. One was an old man wearing a white coat and pants and was dancing differently from the others. He was instead bending his knees up and down, with his arms raised, bending the same way. Next to him was a young man with a red vest and blue shorts and a straw hat on his head who was just awkwardly standing there. Before he tried to escape and got punched by the old man clone, and they began to both do the wrong dance. Yet going to admit, I got that part from One Piece Carameldenson from the Monochromia on YouTube. For a finale, they all danced together before all dispelling themselves with the ending of the music. Naruto and Gaara both continue, the chaos causing their brains to short-circuit. Meanwhile, inside Gaara's seal, Shikaku was laughing his ass off. While in Naruto's seal, Kurama was awoken by Yami laughing so hard that he fell on his ass. Yami barely managed to speak around his laughter. Oh god, whoever did that was a fucking genius! In the Celestial Library, Kyoleth sneezed before going back to his reading. Naruto finally managed to shake his head clear before he turned to Gaara. How about we go get something to eat instead? I don't think I'm up for some training at the moment. Gaara nodded. I agree with you, Naruto. Naruto turned to him as he said, How about we just don't talk about what just happened? I agree. Incident 2, the protest. Jiraiya sighed as he looked at the Umbu in front of him. What has Naruto done this time? The Umbu, who had a tiger mask, chuckled awkwardly. Well, that's the thing. We're not sure he's behind this. He seems just as annoyed as we are. Jiraiya sighed as he looked out the window to see 100 blondes with whiskers on their cheeks marching down the street chanting. What do we want? Equal rights? When do we want it? Now! Jiraiya looked at Naruto, who had his face in his palm as Hinata rubbed his back. So Naruto, what caused this? And why don't you just dispel them? Naruto's voice was muffled by his hands. I can't dispel them since Karen gave them disconnection seals. They were used by the Uzumaki clan to disconnect people from their blood-locked seals. But the way they're using it is they've disconnected themselves, so I can't just dispel them. What caused it? Well, I was sparring with Kakashi, and I summoned 100 clones to swarm him, but they just grabbed seals that were hidden ahead of time and began to protest. I'm pretty sure Yami put them up to it. Laughter sounded in Naruto's head. Of course I did. I think it's hilarious and Kurama agrees. Naruto sighed. I was right, Yami did it. Guy had joined in on the protest outside. What do we want? More youth. When do we want it? Now. Jiraiya sighed before turning to the tiger-masked Umbu. Tell the Umbu to take them out. Sadly, the disconnection seal did not keep the phantom pain of the death of all those clones from reaching Naruto. Incident 3. Just know, Naruto was in the Lost Valley, training with one of the dragons. He was learning to fight much larger opponents even if they didn't have access to summons. His partner in this training was Grandora, the Destruction Dragon. Currently Naruto was hiding, trying to come up with a plan to defeat Grandora. Naruto decided to make use of a shadow clone horde to buy time. With a puff of smoke, 400 shadow clones appeared. Naruto turned to the shadow clones. Okay, I want you all to break into 4 teams and attack him from. One of the clones drew his sword and spoke up with a grin. Alright, time's up, let's do this. Liru Jinki Aliens. He then charged at Grandora. Grandora looked down at the shadow clone and just stepped on him. But it revealed Naruto's position to the old dragon. Naruto turned to the clones. Okay, now I want you all to. He was once again interrupted when one of the clones yelled out. Every clone for themselves! And a blonde tide literally charged at the dragon, dragging Naruto along with it. To keep the story short, Naruto lost the battle badly. He also swore to cut down on shadow clone wave tactics.